Okay, so let's talk about today's agenda. Taylor's quote from a Brit, Margaret Heffernan, author, CEO, broadcaster, and she says, in a healthy team, conflict is frequent, meaning we should not be flipped out by conflict because candor is safe. So you might just kind of wander around
We might wander around that today.
Okay, so we're going to do guest introductions, misspelled, so you can get to know who all is in the room. You have name tags, so you can, so that'll help you. Then Chalmers is working with us. Guests are departing at 11:30. Members are staying for lunch, except for Bethany. Bethany's not coming for lunch because she's going somewhere. Maine? LA. She's going to LA. And then in the afternoon, we have a business review from John, and Alex is going to do his intro part 1 to teach you more about his business. Okay, now I'm going to tell you about, first you're going to know about each other. Taylor Cragen is a guest. What do you do and who do you do it for?
Taylor Cragen with the Jack Olsty Company, Vice President, been there 20 years, responsible for our outside sales team.
Okay, Bob, what do you do?
Bob Campbell, Vice President of Sales for Inkjet. We do industrial printing equipment and inks, I'm sure, as you guys know.
Yeah. No, the other guests don't know, so that's good. So that's good. What do you do, Ashley?
I'm Ashley Thompson. I'm the marketing director at CPAP.com.
Okay. How long have you been there?
10 years.
Okay, all right. I'm still growing. Kelly, you've not been visiting this group before.
I'm not. Kelly Richard. I work with Alex. I am the regional director for Family Tree, and I've been there a little over a year.
Okay. Daniel.
I'm Alex's business partner, also with Family Tree.
That's how I met Alex, through Daniel. Thank you, Daniel. Okay.
It's your problem now.
Nice. Okay. Sarah.
Yes, hi, Sarah Hasis. I work at Savage Brands. I'm the group director of the brand and communications.
Okay, excellent. Lawson. No, this is Gus.
Gus.
Gus, I think you've met Gus before. Anyway, Gus does something a little important for PCCA.
I'm Gus Pisani. I'm Chief Scientific Officer for BCCA, so I work for Jim.
Yeah. How long you been there?
17 years.
Okay. Beverly,
I'm the controller at PCCA,
how long you been there?
19 years.
Okay, a little longevity. Mark.
I'm Mark DuPont. I'm the Chief Financial Officer. I've been there about 16 and a half years.
Okay, so we got a little longevity going. Okay. David, tell them what you do.
So, company's Aspire Fine Homes. I'm the president. We've been in business for about 15 years. We've done around $10 million a year in the Heights, building $1.5 to $3 million homes. About 2 years ago, I started realizing our ecosystem of custom builders is a huge market opportunity. 90% of all custom builders are 5 employees or less, 5 homes or less a year. So what I realized is if we can keep a really high design style, which we do, but then we can build the operational efficiencies to deliver consistently happy customers with customer homes, which you don't see very often, right? Because you hear all the horror stories. Typically, they're too small. They don't have the infrastructure to consistently be able to keep the administration and keep the customers happy. And so we're rolling out Houston, which we believe there's 10 to 12 luxury markets in Houston that will do the 1.5 to 3. So we've rolled out Spring Valley, Memorial West, which is City Center, Memorial City Mall. We're rolling out Garden Oaks at the end of the year with Monarch Oak, which is a little bit north of Hillshire Village. But we think we can go from 20 million to 100 million in the next 3 to 5 years in just Houston before we roll out.
When I drive around the Heights, I see his signs everywhere.
So about 15 projects in the Heights right now, about 6 of them.
Yeah. Okay, Daniel.
My name is Daniel Wang. I'm the Sales and Marketing Director for Asher Community, so I work for Ash. I've been with the company about almost 6 months now, so time is flying by.
Okay, now you came and sat in on another meeting. How many
Yes.
have you before?
This is my second time, yeah, so I watched
Okay,
Chris
good.
Jennings do the
Chris
referral
Jennings.
tree. Yeah.
Okay, we know you. What do you do?
I'm Daniel Alvarado. I work for Universal Weather and Aviation, Chief Operating Officer. And I work with Rob.
Okay, all right. How long you been there?
Just about 5.5 years now.
Okay, he's sticking with you, Ralph. Okay, Brandon. You get to say a little more. Tell them what you do.
Okay.
I'm Brandon Hogan. I'm the CEO of H&M Industrial EPC. So what we do is engineering and construction for chemical plants, refineries, that kind of thing. So we're located in Pasadena. Mostly work in the Houston area. Most of our corporate clients have offices in Houston. Projects up to $20 million in size. My dad started the company 30 years ago, and here to learn how to be a CEO, I guess. Learned everything the hard way.
Okay, all right.
In the right place.
Okay, Brad, hi.
Hi, I'm Brad Boudreau. I'm a sales manager for Swagelock. I work for Chris Jones. Been with the company for 12 years, but just starting to work for Chris in the past 2 weeks.
And he still came. Excellent, very
Thank you.
good. Hi, Chris.
Hi, good morning. Chris Garcia with the Director of Customer Service for Swagelock, Southeast Texas. So I also work for Chris.
Okay.
And also 2 weeks now with Chris. So.
Okay. Now, Sarah, you have a little more longevity, buddy.
Yeah, I'm Sarah Gable. I'm our Director of Customer Experience with Swagelock. I work with Chris and I've been there 16 years.
All right.
Alicia.
Alicia Abercrombie Taylor with American Omni Trading. I have been with Tom Bracken for coming up on 15 years. So since I was a baby.
Michelle.
Good morning, Michelle English. I'm the HR specialist for Tom Bracken here at American Omni. And I've been here a year. He's kept me for a year.
that was so HR. Maria.
I'm Maria Alvarez. I have also been with the company since I was a baby. I'm with Tom Bracken, and I'm the customer service manager. I've been here for about 10 years.
Okay. David?
I'm Dave Greathouse with CDI EGC, Vice President of Operations. Been with the company almost 1 year.
I can never decide what your brand is, so I stick Fenner on your name tag because I don't have a CDI EGC logo. Just a little.
Don't.
Yeah, don't go. Okay. Kurt.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Kurt Hayden. I'm the Director of Engineering and Technology Development for this company, CDI EGC, that's part of Fenner and Michelin. I work for this guy. And to answer your next question, I will have been there 9 years on Friday.
Okay. Hey. And this is Brett Schultz. Some of you guys have met Brett before.
That's right. Brett Schultz, I'm the Chief Financial Officer at Wedge Property Management. We're a commercial real estate company. And I work with Greg Armstrong, and I've been there 9 months, and next week, 9 months.
Okay. All right.
Count the weeks. Oh.
Count the weeks. Okay. And this is Jill.
Hi, Jill Green. I'm the General Counsel at Sierra Hamilton. I'm new about 3 months in.
Okay, did I miss anybody? No, it's a miracle. Okay, now I'm going to tell you about Chalmers. This is great for me. I love doing this. Chalmers is a best-selling author, an executive coach, a consultant, a seminar leader. 32-year career focused on leadership development, workplace culture, productivity, accountability, teamwork, and clarity in communications. He's written 2 books. One is Language and the Pursuit of Happiness. The other one is Language and the Pursuit of Leadership Excellence. And these have been adopted by leadership coaching programs at Georgetown University, George Mason, Harley-Davidson.
Pleased to
that
say.
That sounds fun.
Pleased to say.
Newfield, NASA, Goddard Space Center, and many others. But that's pretty cool. He has a TED Talk, How Languages Generate Your World and Mine. Now, his education, okay, the Yankees in the room will be pleased with this.
I share the mark.
His engineering degree is from WPI in Worcester.
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 All right.
And his saving grace is an MBA from LSU.
Harvard of the South. Widely known.
Okay, now, so this engineer goes off and he starts his consulting career with what we knew as Anderson Consulting.
Or Accenture.
Later,
Yep.
Accenture, where rebranding became critical.
Correct.
Where he spent over 8 years in New Orleans and Nashville, Specializations were in 2 areas, systems integration and change management. And then you left in 93, and you
Been doing
became an
this?
independent
In 93.
in 93. Consultant, keynote speaker, corporate exec, personal coach. And he was also a Vistage Jim in Naples, Florida.
Right, absolutely.
He lives in Naples, Florida. He and his wife of 31 years.
34 now.
34.
That's old, but
34,
that's fine.
moved to Naples, which is gorgeous.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm handing
Thank you.
you over.
It is a joy to be with you, Fred. Thanks for the invite again, and we'll certainly get to know each other as we move through the morning. A little bit of background. This is my 21st year speaking to Vistage Group, so I'm a huge fan of this model, this format, and as a former chair, I believe in it. So if any of y'all ever want to talk to me about the value of a group like this, I'm a giant fan. A few points. Everybody in this room right now knows some, and some of you know a lot of what I'm going to say. Now, you may not say it just like me with my terminology, but I predict at several points this morning, I'm going to cover stuff and you're going to think, I knew that, here's my experience. Yes, you do, and sometimes you don't act like it. I mean this with respect. Part of my, I promise you I have some things I think that will be new for you, but part of my job, and I mean this, I want to be a professional reminder. I want to remind you of some things that you do know, and maybe frame them or package them in such a way that you can more effectively apply them. Everybody, as a former chair, I happen to know the mission of Vistage, to increase the effectiveness and enhance the lives of leaders, business and personal orientation. Listen today, everybody, with both hats on. Because of all the speakers you get at this Vistage group, I'm going to offer today's topic has direct relevance, not just at work, but at home as well. So please listen like that so you can take it there. Everybody, on page 2, here's what I'm up to. I promise you, you're leaving this room with actionable tools. Oh, I'm sorry, the materials. So if you don't have one, take one. And there may be a requirement to share some of these, as Fred said. But if you don't have one, please take one. And we'll just see how far they go. And here's some right here. Yep. Thank you, guys. Let me just take a moment, let y'all get those. Let's see how they go.
Thank you.
Guys, good?
There was extra.
Let's see how we're doing. How's it going back there, Fred? Yep, there's some needle. Hey, this is great. Excellent, everybody. Okay, so on page 2, I promise you, everybody in this room, you're going to leave this room with actionable, practical tools you can use starting today to strengthen your organization's culture of accountability. I promise you, you're leaving the room with those tools. But I'm not starting with the tools, I'm ending there. Especially everybody before the break, I want a chance to engage with you, if you'll let me, in a little bit deeper level conversation than me throwing out 3 of these and you write them down, 4 of these and you write them down. No, what if you actually change the way you think in one area? Updated the way that you quote unquote see things in one area. But everybody, that one area is important for accountability, leadership, organizational performance. What new possibilities might simply emerge as a natural byproduct of shifting your perspective at that level? Y'all with me? That's how I want to start. So do I have your permission, especially up front, for a non-tool oriented, open-ended, speculative conversational space with the promise that the tools will be there at the end? Excellent. Yes. All right, fantastic. Now, page 3, everybody. I start every session I do the same way. Whether it's this kind of session, I do work that's not corporate at all, like retreats. My real job is doing this work inside companies, doing programs, it doesn't matter. I always start here. Now, I'm not a good artist, but this is supposed to be a big eyeball looking at a stick person, meant to indicate you taking a look at you. Everybody, under everything else we're going to do today, my real objective is self-awareness. Supporting you in becoming a more powerful, more competent observer of yourself. Everybody, I focus on self-awareness so directly because of these basic claims or foundations for success on page 3. First basic claim, you cannot change another human being. Who's tried? Who's married? So y'all, I mean this, 34 years of marriage, I love my wife, she clearly can and she does influence me, yes, but she cannot change me. I can change me, but I can't change what I don't notice. You can't change what you don't see. Now you may notice and choose not to change. Great, now you got your eyes open. But you don't notice, you don't get to do squat. Second basic claim, we are not hermits. Means we do already, do we not, big chunks of our life already with and through people. Work, obviously, family. I'm a 25-year Rotary Club guy. Rotary Club, church, with and through people. Everybody is in the relationship business to some extent. Y'all buy that? To some extent. Folks, I do some work with key groups in the Vistage world, mid-level execs. A guy in the key group said, you know what? I've only been in my new job as a manager at this level for about 6 months, but I can tell you already, this job would be so much easier without these people. One of the other members said, hey, look, man, you take those people away and you got no job. That is your job, accomplishing quantitative and qualitative results with and through people. And y'all, we're going to talk about results here today. How many of y'all have a sense that there are certain types of results that we can measure easily, and other types of results we cannot? Y'all, productivity is a result, profitability is a result, but the type of culture you have is a result, is it not? Your public identity, how you show up in the world is a result. The nature of your most important relationships, these are results. So y'all, when we use the word results today, please think that broadly, quantitative and qualitative results. One of my favorite quotes of all time, some of y'all may know this quote, attributed to Albert Einstein. He said, not everything that counts can be counted. And not everything that can be counted really counts. And organizational culture is one of those types of results that's meaningful for us. Now, number 3. If you always do what you always did, you always get what you always got. You'll produce another result, a new result. Of course, we have to take new actions. Everybody, let's be clear. If you get up in the morning and you put on clothes like this when you go to work, and by that I mean not a hard hat, not safety goggles, not steel-toe boots, but you put on these kind of clothes when you go to work, many of the most important actions you're going to take that day aren't primarily driven by how physically strong your legs are or how good your hand-eye coordination might be. You with me? These leadership actions, management actions, aren't physically dominated, but they are real, and they produce concrete organizational results. And these are the actions we'll talk about today. Number 4, we are always at choice, meaning we human beings, we always have choices available to us, and we are constantly choosing every moment of our lives, including right now with me in this room. So folks, example, is it possible for us to spend this morning together and for you to choose to not learn anything?
Yes.
Is it available to you as a choice?
Yes.
Sure. Yes. I've been in these chairs. I know how this works. How's it work? You think about something else while you're sitting here. You do your to-do list in your head while the rest of us are doing an activity. It's a choice. Now, everybody, I got 3 kids, and I can't believe it, but they are 27, 25, and 22. Anybody here have kids? Let me see some hands. All right, now, folks, this is for us as parents. It's going to sound different depending on how old our kids might be, but as a parent, have we not, at one time or another, said our version of this to them? Pay attention to your choices. Because your life, pretty much, is going to go where it goes, pretty much, because of the choices that you make. And Big I, many of us, we are not very good observers of the choices that we now have. I promise you this, you're going to leave this room at 11:30 with arrows in your quiver, tools in your toolbox, choices that you do not now possess. I promise you that in this moment. Also, everybody, please think this way. Every single time in your life that things were screwed up, you were there. We are each the common denominator. I'm the one who somehow keeps showing up in his picture. It's me. Let's take a look. Let's take a look. 5th basic claim, how you see things matters. And it matters a lot. And everybody, is it possible that Brett and I can see something really differently, But that difference has nothing to do with our retinas. It's a metaphor. Now, we use the expression, we didn't see it the same way, but we are not talking about retinal or biological differences, and y'all know this. And, y'all, something crucial is at stake here, because how many of us in this room right now know personally at least one person that the way they see a problem or situation is itself a big part of the problem? Right? The way that they have framed it has paralyzed them. Everybody? This is a subtle point, and it's kind of early in the morning, but I'm still going to try to make it. In addition to my primary objective, supporting you today, I hope, in becoming a more powerful observer of yourself, I have a secondary objective. I would also love this morning to support you in becoming a more powerful observer of the way you observe. Getting a little bit better, y'all, at looking at how you look at things. So in the end, how you look at things itself can become a new variable that you now get to consciously explore should you decide you want to produce a new result. You guys with me? Please, to the extent that you want to, listen like that on purpose today. And big point number 6, change is permanent, so get used to it. Right? It's not me or you, it's bigger than all of us, but we know this. The way you think about change, the way you navigate change, the way you purposely induce change or don't, has a huge impact on a wide variety of your quantitative and qualitative results. So folks, this is the context of our morning. In addition, everything we're doing underneath, I'm coming back here, I'm going to gently remind you every chance I get to pay attention to the one person you can actually change, which is yourself. So folks, to move our morning forward, I'd like you to go to page 4. I'd like you to stay on the left side of your page, please, and individually write your responses to a simple question. The question is, as a leader, what do you get paid to do? Now, y'all, before you answer it, please frame it this way. Everybody here does 10,000 different things. The question is, of the 10,000 different things you do in your job as a leader, at whatever level that is, of those 10,000 things, what would you say are the most important 1 or 2 or 3 things right now that you say you get paid to do? Back up 40,000 feet, cut through all the fluff. The most important 1 or 2 or 3 things. If you want to depersonalize this question, meaning take it outside of yourself, the question becomes, what do good leaders do? Y'all take a moment, jot something down. So everybody, here's what I'd like to do. At your tables, groups of 2 or 3, however it kind of shakes out, have a conversation with your neighbor and share what you wrote. Take 2 or 3 or 4 minutes, groups of 2 or 3, have a conversation, share what you wrote, please. Let's go. Here's what I'd like. Let me start on this side of the room. I'd like to hear from several people, and what I'd like is something your partner said that resonated with you that we can start to use a list here. So with this many people, may not get to everybody, but a few people, there's something your partner said that resonated with you. What do you get paid to do?
Resource allocator.
Okay, so the verb is allocate resources. This is what we're looking for. Hold on. All right. Somebody else, something your partner said.
Be a visionary for the
visionary. Good. And I would offer, as we use this word, it's not enough for me to have the vision, which is important, but also to enroll people in the vision. So they are somehow enrolled. Excellent. In the middle of the room.
Risk management.
I'll say, so manage risks. Somebody else, something your partner said.
Develop strategy.
Develop strategy. Possibly something here, once we develop it, we implement it. But at some point we develop, implement strategy. Something else in the middle of the room. Yes, ma'am.
Coach, mentor.
Yep. Coach and mentor. Coach and mentor. This is good.
Provide clarity on the mission. Provide clarity on the mission, vision.
Provide clarity on mission, vision. Yes. Provide clarity on the mission, vision.
Develop culture.
I'm sorry?
Develop culture.
Develop culture, yeah, absolutely. And we're going to talk about that today specifically. Right side of the room, something your partner said.
Psychotherapist.
Be it.
Not that that's what you said.
Brain surgeon. Yeah, 1 or 2 more. Anybody else in the room? Something that needs to be on a list like this that nobody else has pointed to.
Role model.
Yeah, be a role model.
Understand yourself.
Hold on, understand yourself. Good.
Inspire others.
Inspire others. You know, these are perfect. Now, a few points. Those of you in the room today with direct reports, which I assume could be everybody, you can do this very activity with them. And if you introduce it the way I just did, hey, look everybody, I know we have a lot to cover for our weekly staff meeting, but before we get into the regular topic, I want to do something off agenda. I know all 6 of you right now do 10,000 different things in your job. That's great. But let's talk about this. Of the 10,000 things you currently do, what would you say right now are the most important 1 or 2 or 3 things right now that you say you get paid to do in your current role? Folks, if you have the conversation and set it up that way and actually have it, what you may very well find, of course, is that what you think they get paid to do may not be exactly what they think they get paid to do. And that little bit of daylight between those 2 positions could be very fertile ground for a highly productive, informal conversation before you even get to the agenda. Everybody, on the right side of your page, you have 5 circles. One of those circles, please write the word relationships. Another circle, write the word alignment. Another circle, write the word culture. Another one, execution. And finally, strategy. Relationships, alignment, culture, execution, and strategy. Now folks, not the only way to theme the responses to this question, but after 21 years speaking to Vistage groups, after having my own group, my other clients, these keep coming up. How many of us here would agree that no matter what industry a leader happens to be in, leaders get paid to establish and cultivate mutually beneficial, productive relationships inside and outside the organization? Hard to imagine a good leader who can't do this. You know the term alignment, not front-end alignment, but organizational alignment? Are the individual goals aligned with the team goals, the department, the company, the region, all going in the same direction? We use the word culture. This workshop today is very much about this. Simple question, do organizations have a culture?
Yes.
Does that culture impact results?
Yes.
Yes. Try to have, for example, a successful brainstorming conversation, idea generation conversation, around a table of deeply resentful, deeply cynical people. I promise you a different result. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Y'all, we're going back, this is Peter Drucker, going back and, y'all think about that. Help me translate that for people who don't understand what that means. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. What does that mean to you? If you're going to help somebody understand it who doesn't, what does that mean?
Whether it's good or bad, it's going to win today.
Yep, it does not matter how brilliant on paper the strategy might be, right? This market segmentation, product matrix, channelization, co-compensation, deployment sequence. None of that gobbledygook makes any sense if the people that are the human beings that are the enablers of that can't coordinate, collaborate, communicate. The strategy will never see the light of day. Everybody, including my 9 years with Emerson Consulting, this is my 35th year doing work inside organizations. Now, I've had more conversations in the past 5 years with leaders about the conscious, not haphazard, not accidental, no, the conscious creation of culture as a competitive advantage than I've had in the first 30 years combined. Everybody, something is going on right now in terms of people's understanding of the importance of this non-physical but real thing we call workplace culture. Y'all with me? There is a dramatically increased awareness of the importance of this for organizational performance. Have y'all noticed this? People can copy your strategy. They cannot copy your culture. This you must do yourself. It's an inside job. And I promise you we got some culture tools here today. Leaders also get paid to execute, do it not? To actually produce tangible, usually measurable, and financial results in the real world with and through people. Don't know the expression? No margin, no mission. And finally, strategy. Of all the ways we could do this business, what is the way we are going to do this business? Everybody, y'all, please be with me. Here's where I want to tee up a way of looking at things that's going to be underneath everything else that we do here this morning. Pretend with me that your office only has clear walls. Totally clear exterior walls, no brick. I'm walking the perimeter outside your building and I'm looking inward at you and I'm watching you do all the things you just said you get paid to do. I'm watching you be a visionary and enroll people. I'm watching you manage risk. I'm watching you provide clarity around the mission and vision. I'm watching you shape the culture. What do my eyes actually see you doing as you're doing this? I'm watching you do that. What do I see? What is the human being doing that is doing this? Walking around talking to people. I mean it. Everybody, I'm gonna write it this way. I'm writing the word conversations. You get paid to have effective conversations. That's what you get paid to do. You get paid to have conversations, the outcome of which is something and not something else. And this is so obvious we don't see it. You are a conversational architect and a conversational engine. Question, can you be a strong, I'm talking a strong leader, without the ability to lift 100 pounds over your head? Hope so, it's a metaphor. Can you be a powerful leader from a wheelchair? I'm talking a powerful leader from a wheelchair.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, and we have historical examples all over the place. Folks, my wife is a physician. She's an OBGYN. One of our friends is a surgeon. He said, Chalmers, I have something going on in my right index knuckle. It's been bothering me for about a year. Of course, I've been ignoring it for about a year. I finally went to the doctor last week. I found out this is the beginning of arthritis. Now I'm concerned. I'm 42 years old. Now I'm concerned. Why is he concerned? As a surgeon.
Oh.
The man is paid to cut, paid to extract. Fine motor skills. Y'all with me? Huge physical dimension to that man's job. Everybody, I'm not suggesting that you've got no physical dimension to your jobs. I'm offering, though, a chance to look at the relative difference in importance between the physical and the conversational. Folks, here's a question. No matter what industry you happen to be in your job as a leader, the question is this. Can your career as a leader in that industry ever get derailed because you happen to get arthritis in one of your knuckles? I don't think so. So folks, here's the deal. Given the centrality of conversation for leadership effectiveness, and deeper than this, given the centrality of conversations for process improvement, for accountability, which we're going to get into, for customer service, for goodness sakes, I want to offer everybody this morning, it's worth spending some brain cells looking at language, because that's what it is. So here is our introductory question. If you were to ask 100 people or 100,000 people, what is language? What is language for? What would the gigantic majority answer with? I promise you, a tool for communication or some variation of that response. Everybody be with me. This is such a widely held way of looking at language. Most people do not see that as a way of looking at language. They see that as a definition of language. It's such a widely held paradigm, if you like that word, about language. I promise you, most people do not see that as a paradigm. They see it as a fact. I want to offer this. If language is a tool, it's a tool you cannot put down. This one isn't like the other tools, everybody, because what it looks like now, apparently, this appears to be the one tool that we all need for every single other tool we will ever pick up. This one's different. So everybody, the way of looking at things, or the idea, or the interpretation, I want to tee up and invite you to play with me this morning. Next page, everybody, is this. Language, we'll write it this way. Language creates and it generates. It does not simply describe. And it is important that we get some real life examples on the table here before we go one step further. If I say, Tom, will you have lunch with me tomorrow at 1 o'clock? If he says yes, we have just invented a tomorrow at 1 that 5 seconds ago was not going to happen. We aren't describing anything. We're making something happen. Everybody think about every single time in your life you ever said the word yes. Here's the question. If all those times instead you had said no, would your life be different? Yes. You wouldn't be in this room, right? The simple act of saying yes, these doors now open wide for you. These doors now close tight for you. And y'all knew this when you walked in. One of my favorite stories about how language creates is a baseball story. I'm a big LSU fan. Alex Bregman is on the Astros, so I'm now an Astros fan. It's a baseball story. After a big game, 2 umpires sitting around talking, and the first umpire says, you know, Joe is a fabulous umpire. There's balls and there's strikes, and he calls them like they are. Second umpire said, no, Joe is a great umpire, but there's balls and there's strikes, and he calls them like he sees them. At this point, Joe walks up and said, look, y'all both wrong. He said, there's balls and there's strikes, but they ain't nothing till I call. Think about it. When he says strike 3, you are out. Folks, this question is for everybody in this room right now who is either married right now or who has ever been married. Simple question. Is it different being married than not being married? Yes. It's different legally. It's different socially. It's different sexually for most of us. It's different financially. It's different. So the obvious question, how do we go from being not married to being married? How'd that happen? Somebody said something. Or woke up in the trunk and there I was, right? No. I'm from Southeast Louisiana. I did not wake up in the trunk. No, somebody said something, yes, or I do, or whatever the ceremony calls for. And in that moment, everybody, and we know this, it's not trivially different, it's not marginally different, it's really different. Everybody, we speak ourselves into the world. In a very interesting way. We speak ourselves into the world. Now, I'm not suggesting we don't describe with language. Of course we describe with language. What I'm saying is that is not all that we do. And for those of us who get paid to have effective conversations, learning something about this, not all that we do dimension of language, can be very helpful. Because everybody, I mean this, everybody in this room, including me, we are ongoingly producing, are we not, non-physical, but very real results out of how we wield this tool. Folks, think of it. How was the United States of America created? What is there in the archives, under the glass, right next to the Constitution, Declaration? This country was declared into being, was it not? Now, was there work to do after that? Yes, but without this declaration, and we know this, without this declaration, we have no country. Folks, look around this Vistage meeting here. Think of all the different corporate entities represented here in the room. Here's the question. How are all of these entities created? Think more broadly. How are all of the corporate entities in our country created? Same way, right? And if you want to, you can dig it up. Something called the Original Articles of Incorporation. And if you read it, it's going to say, we shareholders, and get ready because here it comes, do hereby declare ABC Par 100, August 1st the entity doesn't exist, August 2nd it does. And y'all knew this when you walked in. Maybe not exactly the way I'm emphasizing it, but y'all knew this. Folks, I'm going to take a 5-minute detour into the territory of adult learning, grown-up learning with y'all. Here's a question. Do we live right now, all of us, in a time of ongoing relentless change? That the obvious background of it, yes. Given that background of ongoing relentless change, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is learning for your organization? On a scale of 1 to 10? 10, it's 11. How important is learning for each of us as individuals? It's a 10. Y'all, one of my favorite philosophers, a guy named Eric Hoffer, says this. In times of change, those who are prepared to learn will inherit the land, while those who think they already know will find themselves wonderfully equipped to face a world that no longer exists. Spectacularly prepared for yesterday. So everybody in this room has been a teacher and has been a learner in our lives. I know that. So y'all think this way, please. Think about your time in your life when you were in the role of teacher. Think about times in your life when you were in the role of learner, of student. Here's the question. Independent of subject matter, right? Which means learning to ride a bike, learning to rebuild a relationship, learning to lead a company in times of change. What would you say are the most important prerequisites for learning? What has to be in place to optimize the learning, no matter what the subject matter? Open-mindedness, Mark, is my favorite. And we could talk about lots of different ones, but for me, this notion of open-mindedness is the grand poobah umbrella under which all the other ones sit. Now, y'all, when Mark says open-minded, is everybody here comfortable? That's a metaphor. Your head's not popped open. So I want to ask y'all an awkward question, perhaps. If you were looking for open-mindedness, or lack of it, in me, where should you go poking around to be able to accurately make that determination? Where does open-mindedness or lack of it actually dwell in a human being? Where does it manifest itself?
Your face, your posture.
Your posture, and your internal narratives. Does that make sense? I promise you it shows up on your face. I promise you it shows up on your body. And I'll say it also shows up big time in your internal narrative, your internal conversations. Folks, here's a big claim this morning. Your internal conversations that you're having right now with me, right now, around this table, Those are not byproducts of your current level of open-mindedness. They are producing it. Because language creates. And y'all know this. There is a close cousin to open-mindedness, also a spectacular prerequisite to learning. It's when the learner thinks internally or says externally 3 little words. I don't know. Folks, when you think or say, I don't know, you're not describing a state of affairs nearly as much as you are producing something. What you're producing is called a context or an opening for learning. Not physical, utterly real. Utterly and completely real. And everybody in this room knows this already because how many of us here today have ever tried to teach somebody something when the learner thought they already knew it? How much learning takes place? Approximately 0. So y'all, here's the deal. Given the importance of learning in a time of change, it's a 10. And now, given the importance of I don't know on our ability to learn, I want to invite everybody here today to look at and think about I don't know with 2 hats. One corporate, one personal. On the corporate side, the question is this. How do you treat people in your organization who say I don't know? This is the culture question, is it not? Is it okay in your organization, in a public space, for someone to answer out loud, I don't know, to an inquiry? Now, I don't know, and I'll find out by Tuesday and now it's Wednesday. We are not talking about that. That includes commitment and accountability, which we're going to get to, and it is a radically different animal. Here, everybody, we're only referring to the first time it raises its head. Right? The first time it becomes apparent. Is it okay for someone to simply say, I don't know? Because y'all, here's the claim. The way you guys as leaders answer that question is going to be a determinant of, not a describer of, the culture you're able to create. I spent 9 years at Anderson Consulting, turned into Accenture. By the time I left the firm in my mid-30s, my internal conversation was, it is definitely not okay to not know around here. Y'all know the type? But it wasn't explicitly taught. Right? It wasn't like, Chalmers, welcome to the firm, your orientation is complete. Oh yeah, last thing, never ever publicly acknowledge areas of not knowing. It wasn't that explicit, but it was very real for me and very real for the people I worked with. Y'all, I'm not making this up. Here are some of my internal conversations I was having when I was at meetings during my days at Anderson. Please, God, do not let them ask me a question. I promise you, you get me out of this meeting, I'm going to start going to church, I'm going to be a much better man. I was negotiating in that meeting. Finally got my courage up and said, Jim, on the beta test, I don't know that I understand the new system functionality at a level of detail I need to for my team. I think there's something I'm not getting. And someone else said, Jim, I also could use just a bit more clarification. And you can feel the meeting get real. All right now, we are just now talking about what's real. Now here's a question. Who in this room has a good BS detector? Every hand should go up because we are not that slick. We are not that slick. Now when I was a kid, there was a company on TV that made oil filters. The company was called Fram. And I remember the company because I remember the commercials. Y'all may know this. Each commercial would end the exact same way. The crusty mechanic would look up from the car motor, which had blown because, of course, the foolish customer had not been using Fram oil filters. He looks the camera dead in the face and he ends the commercial by saying, you can pay me now, or you can pay me later. Paying me now is finding out now that somebody at the table doesn't know. Now, before the meeting adjourns. Paying me later, of course, is cleaning up the train wreck that happened because they didn't know, they didn't feel safe enough to acknowledge not knowing. So they got up and they did what they did know, and now you get to deal with it. Everybody, I say it this way for this reason. There is a 0% chance that I'm the only human being with the it's not okay to not know thought. I simply cannot be that unique. See, y'all be with me. If you want this degree of openness in your direct sphere of influence, you may need to be explicit and overt here, rather than passively relying on your own past behavior as a clue. If you're not explicit, they may not get it. Happily, you are a conversational architect. And this is squarely in your wheelhouse. And it might look like this. Hey, listen, everybody. I know we have a lot to cover on our monthly staff meeting, but I want to do something very quickly on the agenda before we get started. First, are all 8 of us in this room right now utterly comfortable. It's okay if you don't know something. It's not a character defect. Nobody knows everything, of course. I didn't hire you because I thought you knew everything. No, but I want you on this team because I know you can grow and learn and contribute with us. I therefore have a request starting today. If you're ever at one of my meetings and you're sitting around this table not knowing something, I request 100% of the time you say something so we can talk about it. Y'all with me? You may need to be that overt because you may have a guy like me who came from a place where it was absolutely not okay. But you can create that non-physical but very real space for that kind of openness. Y'all, two of my favorite philosophers in this area are Socrates and Will Rogers. Socrates said, smart people, wise people, they learn from everything and everybody happening all around them. Average people learn from their own direct experience, and stupid people already have all the answers. And Will Rogers said, everybody is ignorant, just in different subjects. Is that not the case? Look around this room. Are there not in this room right now areas of very deep subject matter expertise? Yes. Are there not also in this room right now areas of profound blindness? which means things not only do you not know, you don't know that you don't know. You're unaware of the bigger thing in which the little thing even exists. And that's completely normal in our world. Everybody, when we think or say, I don't know, of course, what we're thinking or saying is, I know that I don't know. Which also means my big eye is turned on enough that I'm aware of the limits of my competency. Folks, I'm an engineer by trade. I like processes. I know that I don't know, we call ignorance. Ignorance is not the opposite of learning, it's the threshold of learning. This is the necessary jumping off point from which learning can begin. Blindness is, I don't know that I don't know. So a quick and dirty process of learning is you got to get from blindness to ignorance. And you speak it so just like the umpire. Boom, there it is. Y'all, on the personal side, I don't know, goes like this. Given the age that you are now, however old you happen to be right now, given the level you have ascended to, right, in your job, in your life, the question always comes down to, do you give yourself permission to be a beginner at anything? Because you declare beginnerhood into being. Like the umpire, you speak it so. Now, if you are a member of this Vistage group, I am preaching to the choir for this reason. If you thought you already knew everything, would the prospect of joining and remaining in a peer group have any appeal to you whatsoever? No. You guys are self-selected, qualitatively different group of leaders than you will find outside these walls because of your decision to stay in a group like this. Everybody, I mean this. If language is only a passive tool for describing or communicating, the last 12 minutes of our conversation do not make any sense. But if language also has a generative side to it, by which we produce non-physical but real results, folks, learning something about this other side of language can be super, super useful. Because think about it. This is what we're actually using, is it not? To build relationships, create alignment, shape culture, drive execution, implement strategy. This is the actual how. The actual mechanism that these kind of results get made manifest in the real world. So folks, a couple basic claims of looking at language this way, and I mean this as we're going through this. If you have a question, observation, comment, let me know and we'll play with it. Next page, everybody. First basic claim of looking the language this way. I'd like you to fill in a blank for me at the top of the page. We all, so claim number one is we all, and the expression is, right, we live in language. That's the expression I'd like you to write. We live in language. And folks, this expression, we live in language, is rather awkward, is it not? Most of us never think this to ourselves or even say it. What do we mean by this? I'd like to introduce it this way. Who in this room right now has the little voice inside? One that's saying, what's he talking about? That's what I'm talking about. That's the one. Who has a debate team? You know, one of my favorite quotes of all time is attributed to Mark Twain. Some of y'all may know this quote. He allegedly said, I'm always in conversation, and sometimes other people are involved. So folks, it's not just Mark Twain or schizophrenics, it's us. It's utterly all of us. Y'all pretend with me, please. I'm now a lion on the savannah in Africa preparing to attack a zebra. I see the zebra I want. It's a slow, uncoordinated zebra, dead last in the herd. Over here are the other male lions wishing it was their turn to hunt. Over here are the lionesses. They're all checking me out. I'm taking a running leap. Just as I leap up, I hit a hidden stump in the tall grass. Boogity boom, head over heels, down I tumble in a cloud of dust. I get up thinking, I should have never had that antelope last night. I knew it was too filling. I knew today was my day to hunt. I'll never be king. Not with this on my resume. Look at them laughing. And look at her laughing at my date for Saturday night is shot. I'm humiliated. I may have to join a new pride. Question, does a lion do that? Doesn't appear to. We do that. We human beings do exactly that. Here it is, in a nutshell. You sitting here with me, and everyone you have ever known in your life and ever will know, and me too, we are all of us continually confronted with events. Events at home, events at work, events at Rotary, events with my kids, events on the freeway. And what we do as human beings, we make up stories about these events, we hold these stories to be the truth, and we forget that we made them up. Now everybody, when we use the term story in this context, I do not mean fib or fabrication. This is not a purposeful manipulation, and it definitely is not a self-deception. It is simply an interpretation. It's an explanation. And folks, I mean this with respect. Of all the stuff we're going to cover today, I know many of you may not retain some of it, I enthusiastically invite everybody in this room to remember what I'm going to ask you to write in the little boxes by point number 1. Please write in the left-hand box the word event. Crucial distinction. Event, in the right-hand box, explanation. Event is not equal explanation. And y'all, I mean this. For those of us interested in deepening our degree of self-awareness, this is a required, not an optional distinction to possess. Example. Pretend you have a middle school or high school child. Your child comes home from school one day, walks through the front door, walks right up to you, looks you in the face, first thing out of his mouth, I'm stupid. What are you talking about, son? I'm stupid. What are you talking about? I got an F, my English midterm. In this example, what's the event? F on the test. What's the explanation? Stupid. Question, everybody. If that child lives in that conversation long enough, is that a descriptive thing or a creative thing? Creative. And y'all forget the F story. Think much more broadly right now. Is it the events of your life or your explanations about those events that are more influential as to the actual actions you end up taking in the world? Which is it? Explanations. And out of the actual actions you take in the real world, you end up producing something called results. Results, do we not? In a tremendously wide variety of situations. And everybody, the explanation is always the springboard for your actions. It's never the event. It is never the event. Question. Out of any given event, how many possible explanations are there? Infinite. Infinite. Y'all, I'm a practitioner. Everything in my books, everything in my programs, I'm sharing with you my version of what somebody else taught me. I want to share with you now where my mind went the first time I was introduced to this. Right, my thought process. Okay. If you put it like that, I guess I'm doing it. If you put it that way, I guess I'm doing it. I guess I am making up explanations of the events that occur in my life. The actions I take are based on my explanations. And of course, the results I produce, those are a function of the actions I took or didn't take. I get it. I'm doing it. But you know what? Explanations are either right or wrong, and mine are almost always right.
Were you married at the time?
Yes, just barely.
Barely.
Oh, I mean this. I want to invite everybody here today not to do that. Meaning, I want to invite everybody here today not to quickly, automatically, knee-jerk throw the right-wrong grid, the right-wrong scaffolding on top of your and other people's explanations starting today. What if we substituted something here right now called effective, ineffective, or powerful, unpowerful? as it relates to your and other people's explanations. If we did that, the questions now would look like this. Brett, is your explanation effective or ineffective, given the goals you've already set for the company? You know, Greg, is your explanation, is it powerful or unpowerful, given what you've already said you want to be, do, or have in this relationship or situation? Does it serve you or not serve you, given the results you've already declared that you want? Are y'all with me? Never in a vacuum. These are never done in a vacuum. They're always done in some context of given the results you say you want. Because everybody, you're doing this already anyway. You are Mark Twain. You can't not do this. Folks, the only conversation we are having this morning is not are you doing this or not. No, it's do you see this about yourself. This is a self-awareness conversation because you're already doing it. How many of y'all right now can bring to mind a person in your life that to you it looks like they don't see this about themselves? They don't think they're doing this. They don't think this applies to them. It's like this Greg, my friend Greg. Oh, you misunderstand. That's not my interpretation of what happened at the meeting. No. I was myself in person at that meeting. I'm telling you right now, that's exactly what happened at that meeting. Folks, we've known each other in this room an hour, hour and a half, whatever. Even in the short time we have been together, it is obvious to me how each of you are necessarily influenced by your age, your race, your sex, your degree of travel or perhaps non-travel in your life, right? Your work history, education history, and how all of these are like filters through which you perceive reality. I, on the other hand, am somehow blessed with cosmic objectivity and was somehow born unfettered in this regard and unburdened by all the cognitive, emotional, and cultural filters that clog you up. I have no idea how this happened. But since birth, amazingly, my eyes have been more like clear panes of glass, allowing me access to native reality. In such a way, it provides me with cosmically objective viewpoints. How excellent for me, I was somehow born and blessed with such a gift. Now first, if your BS detector is not going off right now, it's broken because that's BS. Fred, true story, at a Vistage meeting, I get to this part, and the guy's a guy, not a lady, sitting directly in the back of the room. He stands up and says, my brother, finally someone who understands me. I thought I was alone. You know, the burden of this gift, the only member of this group with any consistent sense of objectivity. Thank you for being here. And y'all, I mean this. Those words were not escaped his lips, and half the other members wheeled and said, now you see what we deal with every month. Now you see. So the upshot, right? Everybody's interpreting no matter what, no exceptions.
Okay, I got a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Remember the thing you were talking about when somebody on your team says, I don't know. And we're talking about that we want to make that okay and have people comfortable with doing that. However, this thing about interpreting and explanations and so on, when that person does that, although you're trying to make it okay in that meeting, you're still interpreting, potentially.
Of course.
You're still interpreting how come that individual doesn't know, if I think that person should know.
Yep.
So how do I cut off those interpretations? It's a judgment.
It's a judgment always.
What if I'm judging that person for saying I don't know because I thought they should?
I'm with you. And we're going to talk about this as we get to the second half of our day. But how many of the difficulties that we find ourselves in organizations and in our personal lives, for that matter, have to do with what other people, quote, should or, quote, shouldn't be doing?
Yes, should.
It's the shoulds.
Should.
And so we're going to talk about expectations, we're going to talk about assumptions as non-excellent vehicles for collaborative action. Yeah, are y'all with me? Right? And so anytime I hear myself saying so-and-so should do that, or they shouldn't,
yeah.
The backpedal question is, well, have we talked about this before? Right? Have we actually had a clear conversation about, and I heard some of y'all saying this in your conversations, about standards, right? About expectations, right? Or, y'all, there's a term we're going to use today, it's called missing conversations. Are there missing conversations in your organization? Are there missing conversations in your most important relationship, for that matter, right? But this notion of missing conversations, and y'all, in the I don't know scenario, I agree, there are 10,000 shades of it depends. Y'all with me? There are 10,000 shades of it depends when in a public setting, how you react when people say that they don't know.
Yeah.
A lot of it depends on what conversations have we had in the past already, right? What prior commitments have been made. But there's still, my claim is still, if it's never okay to not know in a public way, there are certain types of cultures that will be very hard for you to produce, right? Very difficult. And y'all with this one, and this is the upshot of this whole distinction here, right? And it's a self-awareness consequence as well, big I stuff. If you do not see yourself right now as making up explanations and taking action based on them, right? If you don't see that about yourself now, and then you couple this with you not producing some important result that you say you want, everybody, in those situations, the option for you of authoring a more powerful interpretation, it will never occur to you. It's going to be off your radar screen. Because if you don't see yourself as doing this now, there's nothing to update. Are you with me? There's nothing to update. And what you will have effectively done is take off the table even the option of looking at how you look at things. You with me? You will have removed that option from the field of play, and you will have done so in a time of ongoing change. Not recommended. Not recommended. Folks, question. Do your explanations have anything to do with your moods? Take a wild guess. And y'all, this is not an emotional intelligence workshop, but how many of y'all have heard that term? How many of y'all have a sense that, now we don't all have to be psychologists to be a good leader. But folks, being emotionally illiterate is not the answer either. Y'all okay with me? There's something there too, and y'all, this one, as it relates to moods, many of us, if not most of us, are terrible observers of our own moods. We don't even see them as moods half the time. We see them as that's the way things are. But it was taught to me this way. If you do not see yourself as having moods, you don't have them, they have you.
I like that.
And they will color your interpretations, but of course you yourself, you'll never see that. You'll simply continually find yourself just wondering why the good stuff never happens. No idea. Folks, in many ways, my wife is a better observer of my mood than me.
Okay.
Y'all buy that?
Yeah.
After 34 years together? She said, Chalmers, why are you in that mood? You know my response at least half the time? What mood? What are you talking about? Look, here it comes. I'm not being pessimistic. I'm being, objective. Unburdened by all the filters that have you clogged up. I'm simply a conduit for native reality streaming through. I'm just reporting out. Y'all, I mean this. I used to think unless I was obviously manic stuck to the ceiling, or unless I was obviously in a puddle of depression on the floor, I was basically objective. Well, it's on offer. We don't have objectivity. We have objectivity in parentheses. I'll give us that. Objectivity in parentheses. Now, what does this mean? Here's what it means to me. I promise you, I do not wake up in the morning, open my eyes, and purposely try to go about interpreting life in the world like a 60-year-old Caucasian male, born in New Orleans, raised in a little town called Slidell, moved here, married this person, had 3 kids, and moved to Naples. I'm not doing it on purpose, I just do. Everybody, to me, it does not feel like I'm interpreting. It kind of feels like that's the way it is. That's the way it is for me, not for Fred. Y'all with me? That's not the way it is for you. That's the way it is for me. But folks, I mean this, the threshold level of self-awareness that you got to get to is you got to be able to see this. And you got to be able to take ownership as the author to begin with. Once you do that, we get to have a very different kind of conversation and a very different kind of relationship. But this is the threshold. Y'all, a couple more points here. How many of y'all know people that make up explanations completely devoid of facts? I'm talking not a fact in sight, but I got a tightly gripped explanation. Y'all know what Vistage groups do well that other groups in my life, I haven't seen them do? How many of you, if you're a Vistage member, do you not bring your explanations to this table and openly invite your colleagues to poke holes in them?
Yes.
Is that not how better decisions get made?
Yes.
Because we intuitively know, do we not? Not all explanations are created equal. Some explanations are grounded in factual reality in such a way that they are excellent predictors of tomorrow. Other explanations have nothing to do with what's going on in reality, so they are terrible predictors of tomorrow. Y'all, I I believe as a man, as a husband, as a father, as an executive coach, as a workshop leader, there is great value in living with explicit clarity among these two. Separation. I'm 60 years old right now. Maybe it's always been this way, but right now in my life, it's the worst I've ever seen. We now live, in my opinion, in a political environment populated by professionals who are excellent at squishing these together. I'm talking talented in an incredible way at muddying this. So if you want this kind of clarity in your life, on your team, in your organization, be prepared, you may be facing some headwinds. Because a lot of people are not living this way right now. Does that make sense? I believe there is great clarity. Y'all, here's my first tool of the day. If you're in a meeting, whether it's your meeting or somebody else's meeting, and in your eyes the meeting has devolved, y'all know that term, devolved. You're no longer at an excellent meeting. I invite you to do, as a conversational architect, your version of this. Y'all stop, please stop. I want to continue this conversation because clearly we have some energy on this topic. But with your permission, I want to have a new ground rule for us for the rest of this meeting. Here's the ground rule. I want everybody in this room right now to begin operating with hyper clarity, hypersensitivity as to when you and other people are stating facts versus stating opinions. Hypersensitivity to that. You get to say, Jill, I understand what you just said. In this case, I happen to agree with what you just said. My question, though, is, are you saying that that's a fact? Or are you saying that that's your opinion? Y'all with me? We have room in the dance for this now. Because as a conversational architect, you just created that room. I now get to say, Jill, help me. How did you go from event A to explanation B in such an obviously different way that I went from now I know same event A to explanation C? How did you get there? What did you infer or deduce or assume that I did not? Folks, that's a productive conversation. But not if you can't separate these. Not if you can't separate these. On the next page of your materials, there are, on page 7, I believe this, there are 5 competencies I want to claim are important, critical, necessary for any and all organizations. Functional, technical, conversational, relational, and emotional. Now I've got 5, maybe there's 4, maybe there's 6, right? But folks, y'all answer these questions with me. As you look at those competencies, the first question, for most organizations in most industries, which competencies tend to get most people hired? I'm going to say certainly the top 2. Not necessarily all of them, but certainly those top 2, with some exceptions. With some exceptions. Next question. The longer you stay with an organization and the higher up one progresses, what will get you fired? I'm going to say deficiencies in the bottom 3.
Yes.
Y'all with me?
Yes.
Y'all, are we comfortable with this claim? Your ability to intervene in a non-productive meeting and reset it is a conversational competency, is it not? Folks, I'd like you to circle those bottom 3. These are the leadership competencies that I promise you're going to need for relationships, alignment, culture, execution, and strategy. Y'all, the top 2 competencies have become, in some industries, what are called threshold competencies. Does that make sense? They are required to play the game. They're the cost of admission, right, to even be in the industry. Yes, ma'am?
Yes, I'm curious if you have any tips on how to hire for the top 3.
There are, and some of y'all may know a lot more than I do. Southwest Airlines, back in the day, right, was the first company I was ever aware of that Herb Kelleher was running it, right? And they were using explicitly those, now not for pilots, right? But for the support staff, right? For the support staff. And they had an instrument, but one process they did was this. They hire in cohorts, like groups of 8 to 10. They'd all come in, and one of the processes was a person would get in front of the room and talk about why they wanted to work here, what their background was. And y'all, behind a two-way mirror, they were looking at that interaction, but they weren't necessarily just focusing on the person talking. They were looking at the nonverbals of the people listening. And if a person was stumbling in front of the room and somebody laughed under their breath, right? So there was this very interesting, and one of the expressions he said was hire attitude and train the rest. Hire attitude and train the rest. Again, not for pilots, right? But for for people that are doing those other kinds of jobs. Yeah, I don't know what the instruments are. I do know there are some front-end tools that the HR folks use, and I think they are shifting more toward those bottom three because of the use of teams and organizations. Y'all comfortable with that? I mean, so many more organizations are using teams. There's so much more dotted line, sideways relationships, less hierarchical kinds of stuff going on, that those kinds of competencies are becoming more important even in like hardline manufacturing companies. Right? But I don't know the answer, but I do know there are instruments out there
Yeah.
that can be
And a
used.
lot of people use them before they hire someone and then bring them back in for a conversation about what they see on that.
That's correct. And there are a couple that cannot be used to make hiring decisions. So those in the HR world would know that there are certain regulations on what you can and can't use to screen people. Yes, sir.
Can I ask you just a quick question on this, back on the events and explanation? So if you believe, like, about what someone should or shouldn't do, and you believe that to be true, and you can't help it.
That they should have done something.
Should have done something or
Right.
should have done something. And you just believe that to be true. You can't help it. I can't convince myself that it's not
Yep.
true. How do you get to the place where you separate event from explanation?
The first thing, if I'm sitting here thinking that you're not doing something that I think you should be doing, how many of y'all have ever had that experience, right? Where someone's doing something that you don't think they should be doing, or they're not doing something you think they should be doing, but you have this internal conversation. But I shouldn't have to ask them that. They should know. You know, this is a classic case of do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Right? So do you want to be right, which means let me get evidence that I shouldn't have to ask. Fred, do you think I should have to ask? No. Do you think I should have to ask? No. Do you think, look, all these, they all agree, I shouldn't have to ask. And the person is still not doing what I want them to do. So there's an interesting phenomenon, right, that we kind of fall into, that we live in this shoulds and shouldn'ts in a way. The second part of our day, we're going to get real specific on making agreements, making commitments with people. And that's where I'm going to come down, is that anytime there's uncertainty about collaborative action, what people should or shouldn't be doing, I ask myself mentally, is there a missing conversation? Is there a conversation we have not had? That if we did have it, this could be very different.
What do you mean you actually asked the other guy?
Of course. My wife and I, y'all, we had this conversation. Listen, I've been married 34 years. I still cannot read that woman's mind. And it's like, look, I want to do what you want me to do. I just don't know what it is sometimes. Hey, I'm just a guy. I'm doing the best I can with the hardware I got, right? So I'm
So
doing.
you're saying the conversation will interrupt that link?
This is,
Our tendency to.
in my experience, Fred,
Yeah.
it's not wrong that we do this, because apparently we are Mark Twain. We have to. We live in language, right? How many of y'all have experienced the little voice is rarely silent? In fact, unless you actively meditate, it really doesn't go silent, right? That's what meditation is. These practices are for the purpose of quieting this, right? And so it's not wrong that we do this. Apparently, it's part of the human condition. The only issue is, do we see ourselves as the author to begin with? Y'all know this, right? What do you think prevents many people from updating their opinions?
Stubbornness.
I'm sorry?
Stubbornness.
Yep. And also, it's a big I, they don't see it as an opinion to begin with, they see it as a fact. So there's nothing to update. I'm just seeing it like it is, objectively. And it's this tremendous, it is not, everybody, it's not an incremental step to be able to see this, it's an ocean. It's an ocean to be able to acknowledge. It's an ocean. It's a gigantic qualitative difference to be able to take ownership as the author of our interpretations. Right? But it's not bad that we do it. My experience is you can't not do it. You can only do it, and y'all, all y'all know this as well. How many of us in this room have ever done coaching, counseling, parenting, guiding, or mentoring, formally or informally, with adults or kids? Right? So all of us have done that. So y'all, I want you to right now bring somebody to mind across the table from you. And they're coming to you because they need help. Right? They want your counsel. They want your guidance. Right? So as you're sitting there looking at them, and you're fixing to start this conversation with them, once that conversation starts, is this not explicitly what you're about to do?
Yes.
With that other person? Try to help them see, Okay, son, so, okay, so let's start here. So you're gonna stick with I'm stupid. You're sticking with that. Okay, how about we try something else? How about I didn't study hard enough? How about I studied the wrong chapters by mistake? For high school, how about I drank 12 beers the night before? Right? Because we could see, everybody, if the other person changed that, we could see that if they did that, it would move to this action and not this one, and this result and not this one, and this is the result he says he wants out the other side of his mouth. But folks, this is one of those things, is it not? It's obvious when we're talking about other people. It's obvious. What's the hard part?
Self-awareness.
We're seeing about ourselves. But I don't know if this got to the heart of what you were asking. Does that make sense? But you know, this is, and again, we'll be playing with this all day. We're playing with this all day. Now, one more point before we take our break. Please go to the next page, number 8, page 8. One more thing. Language creates and generates, and this is going to be our tee up into the accountability conversation. True story. A friend of mine in New Orleans and I were the same age. He joined Anderson Consulting 4 years ahead of me. Now, we were friends, we drank beer together, we played golf, our wives were friends, we were very social. I joined the firm. I'm now a 1-year guy, he's a 5-year guy. I just spent my first year on his project. He's my project manager. In terms of my public identity, how well I'm doing, in my head, I'm thinking I had a pretty solid first year. I did not think I was A+, but I knew I was A. He comes up and says, Chalmers, I need to have a conversation with you. I'm not exactly sure how to have it. I have a concern that you may overreact to some feedback I'm going to give you about this, your performance this year, and you may think our friendship is in jeopardy. I promise you, our friendship will never be in jeopardy, but there are some blind spots in your work, my friend. Have another concern. You're telling me at softball, and you've said it 4 or 5 times, that you want a long career here. My concern right now for you is this. Unbeknownst to you, if nothing changes on your part, you are right now on a trajectory. It's not going to happen for you. I know that, you don't know that. I'm at the manager's meetings. You're not at those meetings. So I do not know the best way to have this conversation, but my friend, all I know right now, you and I, we have to have this conversation. Everybody, please be with me. Think about your most difficult conversations now, not the easy ones, your difficult conversations. If you have a background concern here, speak that concern out loud. Folks, the conversational competency I want to tee up here is speak into your concerns as a way of creating and generating. Please write the word context on that line. Language creates and generates context. Not physical, utterly real. Utterly and completely real. Everybody, how many of y'all are comfortable in this example? He had not even gotten to the job-specific content. Right, the actual stuff I wasn't doing well on the project. This is all context. Think, how hard was this conversation for my friend?
Hard.
How hard are they anyway? Much less you lay beer drinking friendship on top. My respect for him went through the roof that day. I remember thinking, when I grew up, I'm gonna be like that. He added 8 years to my career at that organization with one conversation. Ambitious people want to hear the constructive criticism. I'll say this again. Ambitious people want to hear the constructive criticism. Do we want to hear it in a context of trust, authenticity, safety, and respect? Yes. But we want to hear it. Who in this room has ever benefited from constructive criticism over the course of your career? Next question. Who in this room has ever avoided giving it? So who are we serving? We're not serving that person. Who in this room has ever avoided a difficult conversation, ultimately had it, and realized you did not die? I mean it. And the older we get, everybody, and the more difficult the conversation, I'm going to make this claim. Your ability to have difficult conversations effectively, almost always, is more based on your ability to create powerful context than it is on your ability to deliver impeccable content. It's not about a perfect phrase that you memorize and impeccably deliver. It's not that. It's context. Everybody, we have a good BS detector. Know what else we have? We have an authenticity detector. Now, men call it authenticity. Women call it vulnerability. It's the same thing. It's how real are you going to get in this conversation. Folks, I believe this. Leadership in wide circles has already gone from command and control to inspire and enroll. and authenticity is enrolling. Tom, if I get a hit that you're authentic, I want to play with you. You cannot fake this. Everybody, I mean this. I'm not suggesting that you bare your soul at work to everybody. I'm not. I'm offering this, however. If you see a difficult conversation on your horizon coming toward you, I invite you in your preparation to think this way. Think, what has been my historical norm for self-disclosure with this person? And when you get into the actual conversation with him or her, to consider moving that needle to the right toward a little bit more business-appropriate self-disclosure. What you're going to be disclosing are your already held concerns. And in doing so, you open the possibility of generating a literally unprecedented context. Never before had with that person, ever. Next claim. How many of y'all are comfortable with this claim? There are no guarantees in any conversation. No guarantees. Y'all, one of my friends taught me this when I was younger. I'm going to share it with you. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got. He said this: if you have a difficult conversation coming your way, prepare like this. Think to yourself this way: what can I do in this upcoming conversation that no matter what the ultimate outcome turns out to be, I will have the fewest regrets? So think about it. If you prepare that way, right, that's in your background. You have a difficult conversation, whether it's performance management or a conversation with your son or your daughter or your spouse, whatever. Right? What can you do in that conversation that no matter what, 10 minutes or 10 years later, you can look in the mirror and have the fewest regrets? How would that translate into how you were in that conversation? What would you do? What would be different about preparing that way from preparing a different way? How many of you will find yourself being authentic? Bringing your best self, hopefully, to the table. Listen, Brett, I've avoided this conversation for 2 weeks. And I avoided it, and that's my fault, and I'm sorry. And I avoided it because I wasn't sure how to have the conversation. I wasn't sure how you'd react, and I wasn't sure how I'd react, how you reacted. And also in the back of my head, I have a concern that if we have this conversation, you might quit. And I don't want you to quit. And I don't know the best way to have it. All I know is the status quo is not okay. And I don't know the best way to have the conversation, but you and I have to have this conversation. Everybody, there is a word I got taught my first day at chair boot camp in Florida. This old crusty chair comes up and said, "Chalmers, welcome to the Florida chair community." He said, "I'm not in the advice business, but I'm going to give you some advice." He said, if you can't consistently create a space, and y'all want you to write a word on this page, write this word pretty big and circle it. The word is confrontation. The word is confrontation. He said, Chalmers, if you can't consistently create a space of confrontation for your members to process issues, all you got's a social club. But it's not a Vistage group. He said, nothing wrong with a social club. But it's not the same thing as what this is. So folks, confrontation is a made-up word. But if it wasn't made up, what would it mean?
Confront with care.
Confront with care. Mark, I care enough about you to initiate a conversation with you that in this moment, I'm not 100% sure how you're going to take it. I care more about you and supporting you in the goals that you've set, because I was here when you set them. I care more about that than my hands not sweating. Everybody, who in this room has ever set private goals? Goals that you don't share with anybody? Who's ever set public goals? Goals that you do? Question, which are more likely to actually happen? Public. Why is that?
Accountability.
Accountability, and folks, this is where accountability lives. You can't do this, you can't do accountability. We are not the only ones having this conversation. In Good to Great, Jim Collins calls it healthy, respectful disagreement. The guys who wrote the book Execution, they call it robust, authentic dialogue. We're not the only ones having this conversation. But our ability to do accountability in the workplace, I want to offer, is important. It is strongly based on your ability to create this kind of context. Now, folks, I want to make a claim. 99.9% of people who work with you and who work for you, I claim right now, they're not even aware this is available. They know confrontation, and they know wishy-washy, spineless. But they don't know this. Teach it to them. Well, What we're doing here today, I'm offering distinctions, not definitions. Distinctions. I want to make a claim here. When you acquire a new distinction, you can see what you didn't see before, and you can do what you couldn't do before. One example. I can never take the action of changing a spark plug in a car and produce the result of a better running car if I don't see a spark plug to begin with when I pop the hood. Y'all okay with that? The first step toward me producing that result is Terry, my mechanic friend, has to teach me the distinction spark plug. And then miraculously, if he does that on Monday, guess what I might see on Tuesday when I pop the hood? I might see a spark plug. And guess what I can then do? I can change it. It's a distinction. Teach people this. And once you have it as a distinction, you can see people not doing it. And you can also teach people how to do it. And y'all, there's one more distinction, very consistent with this. On the next page in your material, and then we're going to take our break. This is from Kim Scott. Kim Scott, if you're looking for accountability in your, here we go. If you're looking for a resource for accountability in your organization, I invite you to Google Kim Scott. She's a lady from Google, from Apple. She's really, really powerful. And she introduced me to this wonderful grid. And here's what it is. The y-axis, low to high. How much do you care personally about the person across the table from you that you're in the conversation with? X-axis, low to high. She calls this your give a damn axis, right? On your low to high on the right side, how willing are you to confront them directly? And of course, where these intersect, for powerful and very different, different conversational contexts. Now let's go lower right. How many of y'all know people who are very willing to confront other people directly? They don't care about you. She calls this obnoxious aggression. Not a very powerful context for retaining top talent. Not a very powerful context for innovation, spontaneous creativity. Lower left. I'm not willing or able to confront you directly, and by the way, I really don't care about you. She calls this manipulative insincerity. BS detectors going off all over the place. Upper left, she tells a great story about this. She had a guy, a direct report, she cared about the guy, she liked the guy a lot, and he wasn't performing very well over time. It wasn't like she wasn't talking to him, she was, but clearly not directly enough. Y'all know what happens to good performers when you leave bad performers in place long enough? It started to happen to this guy to the point now that her boss upstream is aware of it downstream, talks to her about him. She finally does have a conversation with him directly and ends up firing him. What do you think his response was to being fired? Why didn't you tell me this before? Why didn't anybody tell me this before now? She says this. At that point, her internal conversation was, I'm not so nice now, am I? This guy lost his job because I couldn't do mine. Y'all, she invented one of the most excellent terms I've ever heard. She calls this ruinous empathy. Ruinous empathy. Spectacular term to me. Upper right. I care enough about you to have the conversation. She calls this radical candor, C-A-N-D-O-R, back to your word candor. Yep, absolutely. Radical candor. I call it carefrontation. Radical candor, carefrontation. I invite everybody to circle the upper right-hand quadrant. After our break, this is where we're going. Because to create and sustain a culture of accountability, this is the context that we need. Y'all, as a leader, if you're a conversational architect, having the distinction context means you can purposely create it. Here's a question. Just because you don't purposely create context for a difficult conversation, does that mean that conversation has no context?
No.
No. You got one anyway. Right? It's whatever happened to be in the room at the time when you started talking, which may or may not be conducive to the result you want. Everybody, the purposeful creation of conversational context is a foundational leadership competency. But you can't do that if you don't have the distinction context to begin with. Excellent. So y'all, we're going to stop. We're going to take a break. Before the break, one question. How many of y'all can see how what we have covered so far here this morning, how this could be helpful or beneficial for other people in your life. Come back to yourself, work on yourself, work on yourself. Let's take a break. Take a break. Y'all just had a side conversation. I want to make this plain. I believe people that stay in Vistage long term, they stay in Vistage long term for a lot of reasons, but one of them is that it's the only place they get clarification, right, in a way that these kind of groups provide. Y'all, where I'm in debt to Vistage for a lot of ways. One of them is my kids are now in their 20s. I've had to have conversations with my kids as young adults I never had to have when they were 4 years old. And confrontation is something I lean on, and I think about it consciously, that I'm not leaving this conversation. If I didn't care about you, I wouldn't be in this conversation. But guess what? I do care about you, so I'm having this conversation. It's been helpful to me. It's been one of the best things I was ever taught in this context, is this kind of conversational space. So everybody, in your materials, please go with me right to page 12. I want you individually to write down your response, complete a sentence. In your own words, briefly complete the following statement. An organization is what? So very quickly, don't overthink it. An organization is what? What is an organization? So take a moment, jot down your response on page 12. Looks like people are getting some thoughts on the page. Okay, guys, as we did before, at your tables, groups of 2 or 3, have a conversation. Please share what you wrote. Take 2 minutes. Take 2 minutes, please. There you go. Good job. Good job. I'm not. My plane got moved from I'm on Bush. It's not a good thing to be gone. You can take to the airport around the airport. Oh yeah, the 737 MAX 8. I don't know what kind of basis it
Most people's barrier to the hour now is bring all your data managers in. This stuff is not super.
I can understand my absence.
It's like, how do you send me your contact?
Change the
Okay, everybody, let me hear a few. Let me check in. What are some things you guys came up with? Because there's obviously a lot of ways to answer this question. An organization is what? Somebody. Yeah, listen up. Organization is what?
The sum of its contributing members gathered for a like purpose.
The sum of its contributing members gathered for a like purpose. I like that. Somebody else.
A group of people working towards a common goal.
Group of people working towards a common goal. We can see no matter what industry, right? A medical practice, manufacturing company, a consulting firm, right? Very good. Somebody else. An organization is what?
A group of aligned people.
A group of aligned people, like that. Anybody else?
It's a group and a mindset.
A group and a mindset. Nice.
Organized around a common goal and purpose.
Organized around a common goal and purpose. Everybody, there are a lot of ways to look at organizations. We're going to have our accountability conversation using a framework I got taught. I'll now share with you. It's the best and most simple way I've ever learned to understand what an organization is. Please go right to page 13. Here's what we're going to say. An organization is under the shared roof of desired results, which is the company vision, the goals, the objectives, desired future state, on a foundation of your purpose, your values, your identity, what you stand for. The organization is human beings coordinating action. Y'all okay with this definition? Can you see this as your company? A medical practice, a global organization, human beings coordinate action across the globe. A neighborhood pizza joint, they coordinate action in the delivery neighborhood. So everybody, we're going to have our accountability culture conversation using this as our metaphor. The first thing we're going to talk about is the roof and the foundation of the organization. These conversations, if you're a conversational architect and you want to create your version of a culture of accountability, what are the conversations that are required? Please go to page 14, and let's talk about these. We're going to call these conversations for culture. Or everybody, we can call them conversations for alignment, Tom. Or we can call them conversations for orientation. But whatever you call them, everybody, they are always about the roof and the foundation, not the middle of the house. And they are for the purpose of achieving a non-physical result called shared understanding. Shared understanding is the point of these conversations. Now, let's be clear. Shared understanding of what? Well, shared understanding of your organizational come from and your organizational go to. Who are we? What do we stand for? Down here are your values. Guess where accountability lives? It's an organizationally declared value, is it not? Who are we? How do we treat each other? Where are we going? How are we going to get there? What's most important right now? What is our unique value proposition that if we deliver on it will yield sustainable competitive advantage? Y'all, here's the question. How far down into your organization are people able to answer those questions? How far down into your organization do people understand who you are, what you stand for, what's important, where you're going, and how you're going to get there? And folks, think of it. As a conversational architect, this is about 2/3 of the way down your page. There are two types of conversations as it relates to a culture of accountability that you have to be aware of. These are called onboarding, and ongoing. Now let's talk about these. Onboarding, we are talking about, are we not, new employee orientation. How do you bring people into the organization? Folks, can you also have onboarding when people change teams? Yes, if it's a significant enough shift, absolutely. Absolutely. In my experience, now think about this, onboarding. There are two basic types of onboarding processes. There's a weak version of onboarding, and there's a strong version. The weak version of onboarding we normally call osmosis. Because it looks like this. Let's sit the new guy next to Phil and hope it rubs off. The strong version of onboarding is you do something that's not nothing. I'm not being facetious. You do something that's not nothing. You do something that you have actually thought about with some kind of forethought, some kind of intentionality. It is not about right and wrong here. It's about what works and doesn't work, once again. Here's a question. What is the right way to do onboarding? Or how many right ways are there to do onboarding? It's a ridiculous question. It's not about right and wrong. It's about what works and doesn't work. And y'all, one of the best conversations we had when I was chairing my Vistage group, we had a best practices conversation around onboarding. And it is remarkable how creative people can be and are as it relates to onboarding. Because there are some tremendous ways to bring people into an organization. Y'all, if you read Good to Great, you may remember this. Jim Collins talks about how many organizations grossly underestimate the negative impact of poor or non-existent onboarding. Grossly underestimate the negative impact on productivity, which is quantitative, and culture, which is qualitative. Ongoing, again, as a conversational architect. Ongoing conversations for the purpose, now we're talking shared understanding of who you are, including, do you have accountability as a value? What does it mean? And where you're going? Not just for new people now, but for everybody, sustained over time. What are those conversations and how do you have them? Folks, can we agree they vary dramatically from company to company, do they not?
Yes.
If you've ever been in a startup, you know what these are? This is a daily huddle. A daily huddle, which means everybody in the company is in the same room at the same time. Big decentralized companies clearly can't do that, but they figured out something. It's a weekly email blast. It's a monthly all hands. It's the posters in the lobby. It's the placards on the wall. It's the website. It's the TV commercials. It's the trade show advertising. It's all the above, is it not? There's a great Vistage chair in, I think, St. Louis, Alan Hauge. Great guy.
Here's my coach.
He's a great guy. He says this: I knew I was making progress with my chief executive group when all my members understood for ongoing, they would never be able to check that off. You will never, ever, and for some of you, it's going to get repetitive, it may get boring, but you're never going to be done with it. So get ready. It's simply part of what's required to sustain this non-physical but real thing called shared understanding of your organizational values, your standards, and y'all, I mean it. For those of you that have consciously declared organizational values, this is where accountability is going to show up, is it not? Now y'all, Ritz-Carlton, back in the day, I don't know if it's still the case, but they had a slogan called, "We are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen." And they had a policy that custodial people, janitorial people, had a Ritz credit card in their pocket, and they had the authority to spend $1,500, let's say, without, on a customer, on a guest issue, with no additional authorization. So y'all get this picture. Across the globe, all these people running around with Ritz credit cards in their pocket and the authority to use them with no additional authorization. When I heard that, I said this, you know what? That doesn't come from posters on the lobby, in the lobby. Somebody talked to that guy, and somebody talked to that guy more than once, somebody talked to that guy more than twice. In fact, if all you do is put up accountability posters in the lobby and do not have ongoing conversations with people, what do you think is going to happen?
Nothing.
It's worse than nothing.
It's cynicism.
Cynicism. You get people in the bathroom, did you see the poster in the lobby? What the hell's that about? We don't act that way. You know, it's worse than nothing. It's worse than nothing. The posters are the icing, the conversations are the cake. The conversations of the cake. And y'all, let me make this claim. As a leader or leadership team, it will be impossible for you to conduct a coherent onboarding or ongoing process if you or your leadership team haven't made these foundational declarations to begin with. Because in that case, you got nothing to cascade. So y'all, I mean this. Part one of this accountability conversation, if you're interested in shaping, sustaining your version of a culture of accountability, I invite you to keep the number 3 in mind. 3 types of conversations are crucial for us here. They are going to be, number 1, somebody has to make these foundational declarations to begin with. Y'all with me? Somebody has to, number 2, then you get to do onboarding, and number 3, then you get to do ongoing. None of this makes any sense at all if you haven't made these declarations to begin with. That's where it starts. To your level of satisfaction, to your degree of specificness. Now, if you haven't done this, or haven't done it in a while, there's lots of resources out there. One of my favorite books for this, a guy named Patrick Lencioni, the book is called The Advantage. And it's a great little book for thinking about what are you going to put in here and how are you going to put it there. What are you going to put in here, and how are you going to put it there? Now, folks, we talked about these as declarations. There's a distinction I want to share with you briefly before we go any further. Take a look at page 15. We talked about how language creates. Yeah, what's our most famous declaration in our country? Of independence. Yes, that declaration described the grievances against the king, but more importantly, it created a new context, a new playing field. We say we are now equals because we say so. Boom. tremendously creative. Y'all, organizational purpose, organizational values, organizational standards are classic declarations, are they not? And once you make these declarations, you interpret things differently. Now and this is crucial. Pretend everybody in this room except me is on the senior leadership team. I'm the only one who's not. My behavior on Friday does not raise an eyebrow. Chalmers is doing fine, doing well. You guys then, without me, over the weekend, have a strategic planning retreat. And in your weekend, y'all change a major value, maybe like accountability, and you change a major goal. We all come back to work on Monday. Question, is it possible that my behavior that did not raise an eyebrow on Friday suddenly shows up as wrong on Monday? Interesting. How could that be, everybody? I'm doing exactly the same thing on Monday as I did on Friday. What changed? The context changed. And it changed in language. This is still the same brick and mortar organization as it was on Friday, but it's not the same organization. Now it's an organization where accountability is important. On Friday, it was not. Y'all, it's a classic example of the power of language. Right? It's a classic example of the power of language. Fundamental declaration. There's a social commitment. When you make a public declaration, there are social commitments that go along with it, that are expected. Here it is. Here's one. What do we call someone who says, these are our values? Everybody, these are important. These are our main goals. We're going in this direction. This is important. And they take action, looks like it's over here. What do we call such a person? A hypocrite. And you get to be a hypocrite whether you're aware this is happening to you or not, and whether you want this to happen to you or not. You don't get to say. Folks, it is socially expected when you make a public declaration that you will act consistently with it. Here's a claim. Let's say you make some public declarations about your version of the foundation, your version of the roof. I promise you, right after you make these public declarations, you do not have to say this. And now I want all of you non-leaders to watch all of us leaders to see if we act consistently with this. Why don't you need to do that?
Because they will.
I promise you they're doing it anyway. Y'all, another reason, right? Every now and then, get some feedback on your public identity. You okay with that? Someone you trust. Listen, Jill, I want to ask you, have you seen anything that I've done over the past 6 months or a year that in your eyes, in any way, shape, or form, can be construed as me being inconsistent with this? Because if so, I need you to tell me. Because in my eyes, I haven't. I'm not asking me, I'm asking you. You with me? I mean it every now and then, because if you have inadvertently taken some action, right, in your organization that's inconsistent with what you've publicly declared, everything you are now saying, they are going to be listening through the that's BS filter. And you're going to have a hard time getting your message across because that filter's too strong. Does that make sense? That filter's too strong. Human beings absolutely watch for consistency. I mean, think about it. Think about your time as a kid and your mom and dad or whatever. We are on the lookout for this kind of consistency from leaders. So just be aware. Yeah, right? Just be aware.
Are you saying you go to anybody on your team, or individually do you work your way through the whole team?
You know, my experience, Fred, has been, how many of y'all have ever done like structured 360s, right? My experience is there's a wide range of effectiveness with these instruments. If there's already a pretty good foundation of trust, those formalized instruments, I think, can be pretty helpful. If they're trying to be used as a vehicle to try to build trust, I don't think they're that good. I prefer informal feedback with people I choose. Informal, but specific feedback. Fred, I'd like some feedback, if you don't mind, about how I run our Monday morning staff meeting in this area. Or I'd like some feedback about my consistency as a project manager on this team. Not, Fred, I'd like some feedback about me.
Right.
Be specific if you can. But y'all, this is crucial. And it was at a Vistage meeting. We had this conversation. The guy said, yeah, but is it possible somebody that you didn't ask actually could be a great feedback provider? See, yeah, good point. So the initial list you come up with, hold it lightly, right? hold it lightly. Because maybe there's someone else that you totally forgot about or that you didn't on first cut think would be good, but actually would be good. Right? So y'all, you guys just making sense as we think about these declarations. Declarations on page 15 and page 16. The key with declarations is authority. Right? When you make a declaration, if you have the authority, the world is different. The world is different. I can do something like this. Is it Houston and Jill? Have your hands. Ladies and gentlemen, as we gather here today, and I end up, I do the reading, and I end up by saying, and I now pronounce you husband and wife. And guess what? Even if I had the actual book, and read the actual words, and I said them, guess what? You would not be married. Why? I don't have the authority to make that declaration. But if a minister or a rabbi or a judge or a priest, guess what? You are married. Right? So, it's interesting. With declarations, if you make declarations and then act inconsistently with them, your public identity becomes hypocrite. If you make declarations and act consistently with them, you get to be high integrity. If you make declarations you do not have the authority to make, you're a Looney Tunes. Right? You're a Looney Tunes. Excellent. All right, so everybody, now, are y'all comfortable on the bottom of page 16? The bigger print. So to create and sustain a culture of accountability, the process begins with somebody with authority making a declaration. You make a declaration that accountability is important. And you put it right there. Right? You somehow instill it, and that's the beginning, not the end. Then there's lots of conversations about how it manifests itself in action, what it looks like in people's behaviors, all that stuff. Yes, you can do the posters, all that's fine. But the real juice of the onboarding and the ongoing conversations about what it means. But the first step is somebody has to declare it. Somebody with authority has to declare it. And that's you, or your team. Now, let's talk about the middle of the house, the nuts and bolts of execution, blocking and tackling. Take a look, please, on page 17. This is for offline. I invite you, if you're here with a team, even if you're not here with a team, I invite you to use your version of page 17 for a team conversation. Take a look. What have you done well, and what have you not done as well as you would hope in first establishing these as primary declarations, and what have you done well and not doing as well as you would like in onboarding or ongoing? Right? So this is a conversation. I invite you to use this as you see fit. Right? And again, on the top, it's got 3, right on the top. Have you made these declarations to your satisfaction? And then, what are you doing well or not well with onboarding and ongoing? But this is for you to use as you see fit. But I will tell you, Fred, our district group, the onboarding and ongoing conversation, the best practices conversation we had around onboarding and ongoing was robust and excellent and eye-opening. It was very, very helpful for my group and for me. All right, everybody, now, middle of the house, please. This is where we're going to end our day. The middle of the house isn't declarations anymore. The middle of the house, if you look closely, what you're going to see are promises. You're going to see commitments. You're going to see agreements. And I'll use these words interchangeably. Promises, commitments, and agreements. Now, here's the context of the rest of our morning. When you look deeply at your organization or any organization, you know what you're going to see? You're going to see human beings making and managing promises with each other. Big ones, little ones. Formal, informal. Email, sticky note. Can something in one department impact another department? Why is that? Because those departments are connected. Not physically, it's another metaphor. But they're connected, everybody, via the network of commitments that the company itself is. The front end of a promise, commitment, agreement is a request, is it not? That's how you get one of these. Someone makes a request or an offer, it gets accepted, you now have a promise. Now here's a question. Who in this room makes requests at work? Who makes a lot of them? Folks, we all do. We all do. And we're going to end our day with an activity. And here's what I want. I want you to get your materials in your hand. I want you out of your chairs. And in a moment, I'm going to ask you to mill about smartly and to find a partner that is not in the company that you are. Ideally, I'd like the members to pair up with members of the Vistage group and guests to pair up with guests. But the deal is, I'd like you to find somebody that you do not work with. And we'll see if it works, and we'll see if we have an even or an odd number. But for the time being, I want groups of 2. If it looks like we'll have 1 group of 3. So y'all out of your chairs with your materials. When you have your partner, I want you to sit down. You can move your chairs around, but I want you to find a partner and sit with your partner with your materials. All right, very good. All right, everybody, in your twosomes right now. Somebody in your group, somebody be person A, somebody be person B. Do not worry what it means, just get an A and a B.
You're the 18.
All right, let me see the hands of the A people. Person A, you are the requester. Person B, you're the listener, the responder in this activity. Here are the rules. Person A, you're the requester. This is a role play thing, but you're not playing a role, you play yourself. Your current job, your current life, your current challenges, you stay in first person. You're not playing a part. Person B, you're going to be given a name and some background, and you're going to be an actor in the upcoming dialogue. Now, here are the rules. Person A, you're the requester, so guess what? I want you to come up with a request. I'd like your request to be non-trivial. Please turn out the lights, it's not going to cut it. Give yourself with a little something with some substance so you can learn something in the role play. I'd like your request, person A, to be a request for action, which means you want someone to do something for you, not tell you what time it is. Okay? In the spirit of Vistage, I'd like your request to be either workplace or personal. So in this activity, you can come up with a request of a colleague, a direct report, perfect. If you want, however, you can also come up with a request of your yard guy, your mother-in-law, or your son. Okay, all is fair game here. Last ground rule for this activity. Person A, your request has to be one of 2 types. It can be, number 1, a historical request, meaning you've actually made this request in real life, but it did not or has not yet produced the result you want. Right? So it's historical, but so far in some way unsuccessful. Or it's a request you have not actually made, but you have actually been thinking about making. So y'all, let me repeat this, because person A, you're about to drive 6 or 8 minutes here. You're the requester, person A. You do not play a role, you play yourself. You stay in first person. You're going to come up with a request that for you is non-trivial, has some import. It's going to be workplace or personal. It's going to be action-oriented. You want them to do something for you. And either it is historical but unsuccessful, or it's you haven't yet made it, but you have actually been thinking about making it. Now, y'all, this is crucial. If you're person A in this little activity, and you choose the historical, unsuccessful exchange, you already have some data, do you not? This has happened already. Tell your partner, listen, Carrie, this is past tense. This has already happened. And here's what I said to her, and here's what she said back, I think. Then here's what I then said, here's what she said. In this case, everybody, I want your role play to be a reenactment. It won't be perfect, right? But do the best you can. I want your partner to hear what actually came out of your mouth in that exchange. If you choose the request you haven't yet made, but you've been thinking about making, treat this as practice. This is a practice field. Person B, you're going to be an Academy Award-winning actor with limited information. Because your partner is going to have 3 minutes, not 2 weeks, to introduce you to your character, to tee you up, and give you some background. So y'all, if I'm A and Tom, you're B, here's what the tee up might look like for the role play. All right, Tom, in the role play, your name is Phyllis. So, your name is Phyllis. And here's a little background about Phyllis. She started with the company before I did, and she started as an IT analyst. She worked her way up to IT manager before I got here. Not a call I would have made, but wasn't my call to make. And right when I got here as COO, she got sideways moved into sales manager. Again, not a call I would have made, not my call to make. Background-wise, as an IT person, you may gather, she's very strong intellectually, super smart, very analytical. My concern is her people skills, her managerial capabilities. I've talked to her twice, clearly, not directly enough, and so I want to practice a conversation where I'm much more direct and specific with what I want. And specifically, what I want to ask her, I want her to use our new performance management system the way we just redesigned it, right, and actually go through the boxes and actually use it. And I want her to enroll in an emotional intelligence course along with the rest of the team that I've got lined up for next month. Last thing, her eye contact is horrendous in conversations. So she's looking everywhere but at me, and I find it a bit difficult to stay focused in the conversation. Or whatever, right? Get a little background. When you're through teeing up your partner, clear your throat. It's a role play. Now, Phyllis, thank you for coming in. Have a seat. There's something important I have to speak with you about. You're with me? It's a role play. So the activity has two parts. There's a tee up, where you tell your partner this is past tense or this is yet to make, a little background, then actually do the role play. What I want to see in 4 minutes is everybody in this room in character. Person A in character as yourself, either in the reenactment or the practice session, and person B doing your absolute Academy Award best to be the person you've been given. Person B, if you think your person would be combative and push back, be combative and push back. If you think your person would be agreeable and roll over, be agreeable and roll over. It's a role play. But y'all, take a look. Person A, take 3 or 4 minutes, tee up your partner, tell them who they are, all that stuff. Then do not wait for me. Transition right into role play whenever you're ready. Have a conversation, please go. You guys stop. If you were person B in this conversation, the listener, please pay close attention to where we're about to go. Because in about 15 minutes, I'm going to ask you to give your partner some feedback about his or her request. If you were person A, the requester in the role play, please pay attention where we're about to go. I'm going to claim not all requests are created equal. Some requests do a great job of laying a foundation for a culture of accountability and collaborative execution. Other requests do not. Now, folks, we started our day very broadly, did we not? I mean, for goodness sakes, we're talking about language. We're going to end our day very specific, very concrete. It's tool time. Please go with me to page 19, and please stay on the left side of the page. Elements of an effective request. Please write these down with me. The first element of an effective request is a committed speaker. Element number 1 of an effective request is a committed speaker. If that's number 1, take a guess at number 2. Please write committed listener for number 2. I'm going to cover these together as they are obviously related. Now, what do we mean in the context of an effective request by committed speaker, committed listener? First, a committed speaker is not this. Say, Tom, you take care of that for me. Next word. Throwing your request over your shoulder as you're leaving the room, a drive-by request, not a committed speaker. How can you tell if you have a committed listener in front of you? What are some clues? Eye contact is a big clue. Everything you already know, right, about body language. The whole catalog. All of that is a clue. What else? What do committed listeners often do? They ask questions, absolutely. What else? They take notes, perhaps. What are they not doing? They're not texting. They're not texting someone else. They're not watching TV, maybe. They're not typing something unrelated. Hey, Terry, I got you. I'm listening. They're not on the phone with someone else, maybe. Everybody, can you establish a committed speaker, committed listener relationship even in a crowded hallway? Mr. Leonard, man, would you mind stepping to the side? There's something important I'd like to ask you here. So everybody, in this way of thinking, you don't get to call yourself a committed speaker unless you take the action required to elicit a committed listener. That's what a committed speaker is. Someone who does whatever it takes to get a committed listener in front of you. Now, if it's a trivial request, don't worry about it. But if it's not, if it's important to you, job number 1, get a committed listener in front of you or postpone the conversation. Number 3, everybody, future action, and conditions of satisfaction. Element number 3, future action, and conditions of satisfaction. Let's go through this. Future action is hopefully relatively self-explanatory. What do you want me to do? Conditions of satisfaction. Here's where you provide criteria. That if you would see this on the back end, you would say, I'm satisfied. So everybody, example in my personal life, my 18-year-old son. Here's a request. Son, I'd like you to cut the grass, please. I'd like you to cut our grass. I'd like you to cut all of our grass. I'd like you to do so using our lawnmower. And when you're through, I'd like you to take the lawnmower to the edge of the driveway, hose it off, let it dry. Once it gets dry, put it back in the garage, please. Close the garage door, put the hose back on the rack, and turn off the water. Future action, right? Condition of satisfaction, or, and this is a crucial big or I can simply say, son, I want you to cut the grass. So here it is. If you're getting the results you want by making vague requests, by all means, continue making vague requests. Not being facetious, right? Right? Because if you're doing that, a big old chunk of meaning is successfully being transferred with a few tiny words. If you have accomplished that, don't mess it up. Life is good. But y'all pretend with me now. Pretend 3 months ago, you asked a person, you made a request of a person, you did not go into detail, and you did not get the result you want at all. And today, you have the same person in front of you again for something else. And as soon as you see who it is across the table from you, and you recognize that, your little voice instinctively is going to kick off a version of this. All right, now let me think. If I always do what I always did, I'm always going to get what I always got. I'm not getting that again. That was unacceptable last time. But even the thought now, everybody, when you're working with adults, not kids, when you're working with adults, even the thought of going into the type of detail I just did has most of us cringe and hesitate. Yeah. Why?
I think we're idiots.
I'm sorry?
You think we're idiots.
Well, we think we're idiots. I don't want to insult your intelligence. I don't want to be demeaning or micromanagement at best, right? But I don't want to be insulting or patronizing or demeaning. But everybody be with me. Here's the dilemma. Last time in the past, you did not go into detail and did not get the results you want. Today, in the present, you find yourself hesitating at the thought of detail. This is when, everybody, speaking into your concerns can ride to the rescue. Greg, I have a concern that the way when I ask you something may come out wrong. My concern is, because I want to add more detail than normal, this may come off as micromanagement or worse. And I promise you that's not my intent. I just don't know what else to do. Remember, please, last time you and I, we didn't do this, and we got sideways in 2 days. So this time, just to be double sure, are you okay us covering the high points out loud just to make sure? You with me? Think about it. If you have enough track record with the person and you legitimately are sitting there with this background concern, speak that concern out loud and remember the authenticity detector. Speak that concern with authenticity as a way to shape the context of your forthcoming request. Now, folks, in my case, I go back to the grass a week later, which obviously has not been touched. Son, what's the deal? You said you're going to cut the grass. His response? Well, I'm getting around to it. What's missing in my request? Time frame. Element number 4 of an effective request is time frame. When do you want it? Everybody, please denote this on your page somehow because it's important. I'm lumping together elements 3 and 4 because these two are dramatically impacted by something we call the background of obviousness. The technical term. The background of obviousness. And y'all know what this means. Every single request you ever make of anybody is always going to land on top of an invisible but real background composed of the totality of your history with that person. Is it possible you do not need an overt time frame in your request and you and your listener will achieve shared understanding of time? Is that possible?
Sure.
It's possible, sure. Is it also possible you will not?
Sure.
Yes.
Sure, absolutely. Is it possible what's obvious to you is not obvious to them, who's not a clone of you anyway? You know, Taylor, my request, I'd like you to be more supportive of Jill, please. Be more supportive. You know, I kind of don't know what that means. Because what support looks like to you is micromanagement or meddling to you. What do you want me to start doing? Stop doing? Design, develop, procure. What do you want me to do? Jill, from a time frame standpoint, please, I'm going to need that as soon as possible. Okay, August is excellent. I am superb in August. If you want something 2 o'clock Central Time Tuesday, why not request it 2 o'clock Central Time Tuesday? You know, one of my teachers in this work says this. He said, look, if you don't care when you get stuff from other people, ask for everything as soon as possible, and that way you will never be disappointed. The last two elements of an effective request, context and mood. Context and mood. And we talked about context a moment ago. Speaking into your concerns is a predictable way of shaping context. There is, however, a broader way. Context comes into play, and y'all know this already. How many of us in this room like to know why we are being requested to do something? I like to know why. It helps me. This is where you give that to your listener. You know, Gus, given what's happened with the Ace Hardware thing, that and the third quarter goals being like they are, plus the fact that we don't know this customer that well, my request is that, or whatever. Y'all may have seen this too. There's a neat TED Talk out there. The guy's name is Simon Sinek, S-I-N-E-K. Something about start with why or power of why. To me, it's 16 minutes well spent. And the mood of the request, yours and theirs. Everybody be with me. Build this house, right? Bunch of interconnected commitments in such a way that you allow a whole bunch of individual commitments to have unclear or nebulous conditions of satisfaction, unspoken or assumed timeframes. A bunch of uncommitted listeners and multiplied across the totality of interactions in this network of interdependency. Make a prediction about results. What do you predict? Not good. Everybody, you're going to sub-optimize at best and train wreck at worst. You're going to say as soon as possible, I'm going to interpret that as August. Of course, you didn't mean August. You meant tomorrow by 2. Of course, you didn't say tomorrow by 2. And I just have hung you out to dry. You know why? I did not realize each of us here, we do not operate as independent islands in a vacuum. Everybody in this organization already is part of an already existing network of interdependency that is already the driver of our productivity and accountability or lack thereof. This is already happening. Folks, all we have just done is shine a light, bring some new distinctions, a shared vocabulary to the front end of making a workplace commitment. But if you're interested in sustainable accountability, the front end is not sufficient by itself. Right side of your page. How do you respond to requests, and how do you allow people to respond? There are 4 and only 4 valid responses. That's it. That's it. If you're interested in healthy, sustainable accountability, culture of accountability, and excellence in collaborative execution, you got 4 choices. Now, I'm not suggesting these are one-word answers you blurt out in a vacuum. You talk, you engage, there's a back and forth, there's a give and take. The claim here is, when you're getting up from the table and leaving the room, at that point, you have ensured that you have one of these 4 in place. Please write, yes, no, commit to commit, and counter offer. Yes, no, commit to commit, and counter offer. 4 and only 4. Let's talk about these 2. First 2, very straightforward. Tom, you make a request of me, we give and take, give and take. After all the talking's done, option 1, I end up saying yes, in which case we now have a commitment. Future action, conditions, time frame, head on down the road. Option 2, Tom makes a request, we talk and we talk, but in this case, I end up saying no. In which case we do not have a promise. Now we may have learned something in the conversation, yes, but no commitment is in place. You know that, I know that. Option 3, Tom, I understand your request, but I cannot even answer you right now. I need my other calendar. I think I have something that Tuesday. But I tell you what, I'm going to go check. I will have a yes or a no by 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Not I'll get back to you later. No, no, no. A yes or a no by 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Commit to commit. Option 4, Tom, I understand your request. You want 5 of those sites up and running by May 1st. I understand that. I just can't do it. I can do 4 by May 1st or 5 by June 17th. Counter offer. Can either of those get us to a yes here today? Everybody take a look, please. As different as these responses are, how are they similar? What do they have in common?
They're clear.
They're clear. They are definitive. They are not open-ended. What responses are conspicuously absent from our little list? Maybe it doesn't make the list. I'll try. What does Yoda say about try? There is no try. There is do or do not. If I say I'm going to try to come to your party on Saturday, are you going to see me at that party? No. I'm not going to that party. I'm not going to that party. It's a personal, private out. Listen to how we speak. A blank stare doesn't make the list. I'll do my best. Doesn't make the list.
I'll get back to you.
I'll get back to you. Doesn't make the list. Y'all, build this house on a bunch of interconnected commitments where you allow people to close those individual commitments by saying, I'll try, I'll do my best, we'll see, maybe, and multiply it across the totality of interactions in this network of interdependency. All the results are bad. Yes, sir.
So what if you make the request and the other person does say, I'll try, and you say, there's no try, there's only do?
Y'all, what I've seen?
Well, things come up, and I can't predict, and I've got other things.
I'm with you.
How do you get them?
There's a couple
those
points.
4 things without being a jerk.
There's a couple points. Number one, if you have these as distinctions in the back of your mind, you can know that this is your intent. That ultimately, in the ideal sense, in the ideal world, you're going to leave with one of these 4 in place. How many of y'all had been in conversations where legitimately maybe was not going to be okay? The train has left the station and we're not leaving this room without a decision. There's too much at stake. Y'all, there are cases in which that is absolutely what we do. There are other cases in which, you know what, I can live with a maybe. But if you live with a maybe, you live with a maybe with both eyes open. And you now know you have just slung a maybe into this network of interdependency. And you're okay with it, given your other priorities.
But can you come back and say, well, what can you commit to?
Absolutely. I would say, the way as you were saying it, I would try to do some kind of counter offer, right? And y'all, that was a bit silly. I don't want to imply that for your request to be considered effective, you have to come locked and loaded with all the detail I just did. That was silly. In many ways, you will often start more collaboratively. You're like, listen, okay, you can't do it then, but when can you do it? Or I have a request to make, but I'm not exactly sure what I want. I think I know what I want, but I also don't know what's on your plate. And also, you may have a better idea than I do about how to get there once you understand what I'm trying to accomplish. And so that open-ended front end, I think, is absolutely doable and probably very likely, right, for many of us. But you know in the back of your head, at some point, you're going to drill down to where you ultimately get some clarity on the front end. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Y'all, can y'all see this as a pay me now or pay me later opportunity? This is framing it, right? Paying me now is having a little bit of discipline, a little bit of rigor on the front end. Again, it's not going to be 100%, but you can at least aim for this, knowing that on the back end it's going to be a lot easier. Y'all, this is where the rubber hits the road for collaborative action. I can go down no further than this. These are the actual nuts and bolts of collaborative activity, the blocking and tackling of collaborative activity. You can do this well, or you can do this poorly, but you can't not do it. And you're doing a version of it now. Does that make sense? You can't not do this. You can only do effective versions of it or less effective versions of it. But you're doing it. Y'all, one of my desired results from today is this. Everybody in this room, you will notice this, and you will notice this, starting right now, every single time you make a request ever. Sorry. And then you will notice, really, and then you will notice this and this every single time somebody makes a request of you. Taylor, you have a time frame for me. I didn't hear the time frame. Right? You will listen for it. You will look for it. And if it's not there, you can speak into it. You can speak into it. Everybody, it is demonstrably true, is it not, that your company culture influences how people work together. Can we acknowledge that causality? Right? So number one, your culture influences how people work together. Another causality, by improving how people work together, you can shape the culture. Causality is two-way because language creates, especially if the culture you want is your version of a culture of accountability, because these will help you get there. So folks, once you have declared accountability into being as a foundational value in your house, these are the tools people need to actually practice it. Give them some new distinctions. Right? Give them some new tools. Help them see this. So y'all, in your twosomes right now, do not redo the role play. I want you to critique it. This time, person B, the listener, I'd like you to go first. Person B, start here. Do you fully understand the short-term, long-term, quantitative or qualitative result your partner was seeking in the exchange? If you don't understand it clearly, get that understanding right out of the gate. Terry, what exactly were you wanting to have happen as a result of this? Once you have that clarity, can you use this, right, to give your partner some feedback? That's how he or she could tweak the exchange to up the chances of getting that result. Person A, the requester. This is self-awareness for you now, right? What do you think about your own request, given what we've just covered? What do you see that maybe you could tweak? And everybody, almost always it's a tweak, not an overhaul, right? What can you shift? What can you adjust to up the chances? And again, it's all about results, of actually getting the result that you want. So y'all take 3 or 4 minutes, have a conversation in your twosomes, then we'll come back together. Please go. Okay, everybody. Those commitments, I think, are great. Everybody, let me check in. Let me check. How many of you, whether you were person A or person B in the role play, or person C over here, how many of you benefited from your partner's input just now? You saw some stuff, y'all? Well done, and I mean this. If your request is important to you, no matter what the nature of it is, if it's important to you, I invite everybody in this room to at least think about context. What are you going to say right out of the gate to paint the why? Right out of the gate to share your concerns, to help the other person understand the larger picture. There's no such thing as shared commitment without shared understanding coming first. Right? Shared understanding is the prerequisite for shared commitment. And context is a gigantic helper. But you got to have the distinction context to begin with before you can purposely create it. Now, I want you to stay in your twosomes. Please go in your materials to page 20. This time, I want you to write in here that the roles for this other activity are going to be a little bit different. Person B, alongside person B, I want you to write the phrase, person that had commitment broken to them. Person B, you had a commitment broken to you. Somebody made a promise to you, person B, and they did not keep it. Person A, person who broke commitment to person B. So these are the roles. Person A, you're the person who broke a commitment to person B. Person B, you're the person who had a commitment broken. So this activity has 3 parts. Person B, you're going to be the driver. It's a 3-part activity. The first one is completely mental, completely silent. Person B, I'd like you to think of and bring to mind a situation where somebody made a promise to you and did not keep it. If you do not want to or can't think of a real one, make up a plausible one, right? That it could have happened, and if it did happen, it would not be good. Okay? The bigger, the better. So think of right now, person B, this is a mental activity. Bring to mind a situation in your professional or personal life where somebody made a commitment to you and did not keep it. If it's real, that's great. Bring it to mind. If you can't or don't want to bring up a real one, think of something plausible. So let me give you 30 seconds. Person B is mentally bringing to mind a situation. It can be professional or personal. It can be from yesterday or when you were a kid. Right? Doesn't matter. All right. So all the person Bs, do you have one? Second step of this activity, I want you to share with person A what the situation was, what the background was. Do not solve it. Do not address it. Just share it. Right? So y'all take 2 minutes. Person B, share the situation with person A. Please go. Don't solve it. Just share it.
Where I was surprised by people who used to all the different men in the office and do sales in the Midwest. And so I was in a position out of New York. And my first baby Jessica was with my grandparents, and I wasn't around a new scene. The first one to ever move out of New York. After I made commitments, sold the house, got to they reneged on managing the Obviously, it worked out. She's real and kind.
Okay, y'all, let me check. Are y'all at a point where you've shared the situation? Okay, here's what I'd like. Part 3 of the activity. Part 3 of the activity. I want everybody out of your chairs, please. We don't have a lot of room, but still out of your chairs. I want you to find some space. It doesn't have to be a lot. I want you to get at least 3 feet of space between you. So find some space. Y'all can use this up here. Come up here. Get some space. I want 3 feet of space in between you. Here's the activity. Here's the activity. I want you to walk toward each other at my signal. This is the first time you have seen each other since it became apparent the promise was not kept. No further instructions. Please interact. Go.
Would have been my thought
Hey, Chris. Sales out here different than what I thought. I'm learning. I'm trying.
When you are complete, have a seat. Okay, everybody, bring it down. Let's go. Everybody. Everybody, bring it back to your seats. Bring it back to your seats. Well done. Well done. Now, everybody, I was not able, obviously, I was not able to listen.
Are we going back to our regular?
Yeah, you can go back to your regular seats or wherever you're close. It's okay with me. Everybody. I was not able to hear all of the individual interactions in this room, but I know from experience there were wildly different degrees of effectiveness going on in this room. There's a question in your materials. Please take a look at page 21. What responses are possible when people do not keep commitments? Okay? What responses are possible? Look at number 1. One possibility is you do nothing and ignore it. If you've ever been on the receiving end of a broken promise and you do nothing and ignore it, get ready for resentment to be your buddy. Get ready for resentment and get ready ultimately for dignity issues. What the heck's going on, man? Brett, you make a promise to me, so I'm saying to myself, you make a promise to me, you don't keep it, and I do nothing, and that's okay? I don't think so. Not recommended, number 1. Number 2, gossip and complain loudly to others. Recreational character assassination. Not recommended either if you want to get the thing accomplished and salvage the relationship. Not recommended. Number 3, blow up loudly and publicly in a fit of anger. A big outrage in the hallway. Kaboom! Not recommended as well. Folks, number 4, make a responsible complaint. A responsible complaint is a tool, and folks, to me, a responsible complaint is required, and it's not the same as complaining. A responsible complaint is required to sustain healthy accountability for this reason. What happens if you get pretty good in your company at people making effective requests, and you get pretty good at people using valid responses, and they just don't do it? They simply do not do what they plainly said they were going to do. You gotta have a mechanism. And this is it. Everybody, I'm a context person. My favorite way to make a responsible complaint is this. Hey Brad, how's it going, man? Going pretty good today? Excellent. Remember last week, our group of 6, we collectively agreed that together we would start using this thing called a responsible complaint in situations where it looked like a commitment was not kept or not managed? Well, that's why I'm here, because in my notes it says that you said you would do X by Y date, and to my knowledge it hasn't been done. So please, we have to have this conversation. Everybody, I mean this, if you want to see responsible complaints in your sphere of influence, happily, you are a conversational architect, and this is in your wheelhouse. I think step number 1 is on Monday, talk to the people you work with and just make an agreement. Hey guys, you know, I belong to a leadership peer group, and sometimes we get tools, not shovels, not rakes, but still tools. And one of them is called responsible complaint. And what it means is we're going to get up out of our chairs right now, the 7 of us, and have a mutual conversation among each person. And we're going to say, listen, Jill, from this point forward, I promise that if you fall down on a commitment to me, I promise I'm coming to you directly. And I like your commitment that if I ever fall down on a commitment to you, I want your commitment that you're going to come directly to me. I'm a big guy, I can take it. I don't want to be the last one to know about it. I want to be the first one to know about it. Folks, that's the first step, I think. Just make an agreement with people you work with. And y'all, if I fall down on a commitment to you, it's virtually guaranteed I'm not doing it on purpose. I'm overcommitted, I'm covered up, whatever. It's a mistake. I'm not trying to do it on purpose. So y'all, if you take a look, how do you make a responsible complaint? Look at number 2, start with some facts. Did we or did we not have a commitment to begin with? Everybody, is it possible that I left the meeting thinking Brett made a promise to me, and Brett left the meeting thinking we had just talked about something? Is that possible? That is very possible. If that's the case, well look, okay. Next time, let's make sure you get a yes before you leave. Right? Let's make sure that we have some clarity as we're leaving the room on this. Is it also possible that he has kept a commitment, I just don't know about it? Well, that's another situation. All right, Brett, thank you, I'm glad. All right, but here, next time, once you and I work together, if you do something for me, I request that you always let me know via email when it's complete, or whatever the case may be. If it is the case that a commitment was made and not kept, well, then you make a complaint. Say, listen, this is not okay. This is the bad thing that happened. I had promised Fred I'd have that report to her by 2, because you told me you'd have to meet by 10, so I could make my edits. And now I look like an idiot at that meeting. I request you do it now, please. Or when can you do it? You renegotiate the commitment, or you revoke it. You know, this is called keeping the relationship clean. You okay with that? Don't leave it hanging, right? Okay, look, water under the bridge. All right, the meeting's passed. I wasn't happy, but, you know, we're done. Last question, everybody, in a responsible complaint is you get to ask, is this an event or is it a trend? I love that question. Is this an event? All right, Brett, it happens, man. It's a one-off. I make mistakes too. That's very different, is it not, than, hey, listen, in addition to this one, this is like the 4th time we're kind of having this same conversation in 3 months. And by the way, one of our values here is accountability. And this ain't it. Whatever this is not that. So we may have to have a bigger conversation about cultural fit. Does that make sense? It's a mechanism, but you got to have some version of this to sustain accountability. Y'all, 1 or 2 points as we close up. Please take a look. Jump right to page 23. Holding somebody accountable who said, I'll try. Easy or hard? Hard, like nailing Jell-O to the wall. So something like this can help everybody here, because all of us are concerned about our version of accountability. Next, there's no such thing as time management. You never had it, you never will. Now, I understand that term, But how many of us in this room right now are walking around with invisible backpacks on our back? And in the backpack are 47 different promises in different stages of completion. This is the modern human. We are managing commitments, not time. It's a slight shift in focus, but I believe it can be a helpful shift in focus. Everybody, this is a missing conversation. Have this conversation with your people. Have them understand they are managing commitments, not time. It's a different context. It's a different come from. I believe this. I'll make this claim right now. I believe every single person who works with you and who works for you right this instant, all of them are fully capable of managing 100% of their commitments, no exceptions ever. Even if there's a tornado and a hurricane and an earthquake on the same day. No exceptions. I did not say keeping their commitments. I said managing their commitments. Y'all okay with this distinction? What do we mean by managing commitments? To me, it means this. In the act of me making a commitment to Jill, you know and I know that if at any point during that time frame, if I even get a sniff that maybe I cannot keep this promise as initially made, it is my job to let you know right then, right away. We even agree ahead of time on how I'm gonna let you know. Okay, Jill, this is so important, you're gonna send me in person, or it's an email. You know it's my job to let you know. I know it's my job to let you know. It is public knowledge around the table that the person who makes the commitment, it is their job all the time to manage it all the way through, no exceptions. Can anybody in this room come up with one valid reason why somebody who works with you or for you should not be able to manage 100% of their commitments? Folks, this is a missing conversation. Commitment management. Managing commitments is the competency, and 100% is the standard. And folks, this set of tools can be really helpful in that. This is where the rubber hits the road for collaborative action. These are very concrete. Yes, sir?
Chalmers, I was thinking that the better you get at managing all their conversations, the easier it gets to say no to new commitments coming at you.
It does.
But you can't take on. Your
Absolutely.
Plate, you know how big your plate is.
Y'all know this, right? If you can never say no, yes doesn't mean very much. And if everything is hair on fire, priority A1, then nothing is. And how many of you in this room have an understanding that part of your job is to help people prioritize? And y'all, there was a CEO, it's a lady CEO, I saw her on TV. She had a big sign behind her desk that said, ruthlessly prioritize. And there's no easy way, but part of it is that. Y'all, bottom of the page, we teach people how to treat us and you get what you tolerate. In the end. If I make a promise to Brett and I do not keep it and you do nothing, what have you taught me? There's no consequences. It's okay to break promises to old Brett. Everything we do is a teaching. Y'all, I'm gonna leave you with one of the best distinctions I was ever taught in my life, and it's this. A promise broken is not at all the same thing as a silent expectation unmet. If you're married, this will serve you. Jill, if you break a promise to me, there is a 100% chance I'm going to make a responsible complaint. We have a trust issue, we're having this conversation. Can y'all see how different that is than if you just don't magically fulfill my unspoken expectation? Folks, in that latter case, I have zero grounds to make a complaint of you. Zero. Now, I may certainly make a request of you, yes, but very different energy is there not around a request from a complaint. Not the same energy. I believe this. I believe there are thousands, if not millions of people this instant walking around offended. You know why they're offended? Because people in their life didn't magically fulfill their unspoken expectations. Now they're offended. Yep. Resentment is that which arises when you fail to honor a request I never made. And unfortunately, there are too many resentful people walking around. Y'all, I'm going to end with this. It's a true story. I'm not making this up. My wife and I were married 1 year in New Orleans. No kids. She was like a second-year med student. I was at Anderson Consulting in New Orleans. It was a Thursday night. I remember I'm a Saints fan. I was in the den watching NFL Thursday with the Saints. She was in the kitchen washing dishes. And at some point during the game, I remember it's getting kind of loud in there. I'm having to I'm having to turn the game up, where I can hear properly because of the racket coming from that kitchen. A little bit later, now it's getting inconsiderately loud. It's almost as if she's doing this on purpose. Almost. Y'all know this is not ending well, right? It did not end well. We had the first in our marriage what's called a come to Jesus meeting. And what that meant was she had an expectation that, banging on the pots and pans, that I would interpret that as a request to please come help me do the dishes. Unfortunately, my 26-year-old South Louisiana self at that point in time was operating with a set of basic beliefs that went something like this. Men are naturally born with just certain built-in aptitudes that are simply inherently part of being a man. These are things like hunting and fishing, drinking beer, playing sports, watching sports, working for a living, that sort of stuff. Women are very different. Women have a very different, not only different set of built-in aptitudes, things they're naturally good at, but also things they naturally just inherently enjoy by virtue of being a woman. And in this category goes housework. And isn't that perfect? Because, as it turns out, that happens to be exactly the sort of stuff that I myself do not enjoy. What a team! What a team! This is working out great. This is working out great. She said, you have lost your mind. I don't remember, it got kind of fuzzy at this point, but it was something around, I don't enjoy this one iota more than you do. She said, here's what she said, I just have different standards for cleanliness. It was horrible, y'all. A lifetime of beliefs were crushed and stomped at the sink. But I can be taught, okay? Okay, we have a new agreement. I'll do them Monday, Wednesday. You do them Tuesday, Thursday. We have paper plates Friday. We go out on the weekend. So y'all, nothing wrong with expectations comes from a Latin word that means to wait. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with waiting, but I would not build a house on it. It's a very precarious scaffolding for collaborative action. And take it from me, it's not a good scaffolding for relationships. Keep them separate, keep them separate. So with this, folks, I want to keep my commitment and end on time. I want to thank you for your fantastic hospitality. Fred, I can't share with you how much I enjoy seeing you again. We have a nice, wonderful history together. A few points, y'all. I do a newsletter from my website. It comes out quasi-quarterly-ish. I'm managing this commitment. It is not a quarterly newsletter. It is sporadic. Sporadic. So if you're interested in a high-quality sporadic newsletter, mine's the one for you. Make sure I get a card from you before I leave. I'll put you on the list. Or my email address is on the front of the information. You can always get me there. My TED Talk is online, y'all. So if you Google Chalmers Brothers TED, it'll pop up. Hopefully it's a 14-minute coherent short version of some of these core messages. Y'all, my real job is doing this work inside organizations. Can you see how valuable it could be if people in your company all got these distinctions and tools? I mean this, when the time is right, I'm an email or phone call away. I promise you, I do stuff all over for companies large and small. Starting today, I will be a long-distance sounding board for all of you. And I mean that. I will answer an email. If you have something that you want another pair of eyes and ears on, that you want to run by me, I promise you I'll respond. Just email me, and we'll start a conversation right now. We'll start a conversation right now. Y'all, I made a public declaration 3 years ago. I'm going to shift the consciousness of 1 million people. So, if you take anything out of this room and apply it at work or at home, in my mental math, rest assured I'm counting you as 2. On my mythical journey to my million. I have no idea where I am, but that's my story. I'm sticking to it. So, y'all have a great afternoon, and thanks again for your hospitality.